Hallo zusammen und schön, dass ihr eingeschaltet habt zu einer kleinen Vorbereitungsfolge mit Blick auf mein angehendes neues Let's Play zu Trades of Cold Steel 3. Normalerweise mache ich sowas ja nicht, aber die Komplexität dieser Spielereihe macht so ein Video auf jeden Fall mehr als sinnvoll, würde ich meinen. Denn es gibt hier zu Beginn nicht nur einen Backstory-Part, den ich mir gerne einmal anschauen würde, auch vor dem Hintergrund, dass mein Let's Play zu Teil 2 schon ein bisschen zurückliegt. Es gibt am Ende von Trades of Cold Steel 2 allerdings nur, wenn man alle Black Records im NG Plus einsammelt, auch ein Video, was ein bisschen, ich will nicht sagen neues Ending nach sich zieht, aber ein bisschen Lore-Reveal mitbringt, und das werde ich hier in diesem Video auch noch einmal vollständig einblenden, weil das haben wir in meinem Let's Play nicht gesehen, weil ich da kein NG Plus nochmal durchgespielt habe. Insofern schließen wir hier erstmal alle Lücken, die es gibt, also die es bei mir zumindest gibt, wenn wir zurückblicken auf das, was man vorbereitend für Teil 3 bestenfalls wissen sollte. Und ich werde euch in der Videobeschreibung einmal ein paar Zeitstempel auch mit reinsetzen und euch hier jetzt irgendwo auch einblenden, wo ihr direkt zum Video kommt, denn ich starte jetzt erstmal mit der Backstory und gehe davon aus, dass das ein Weilchen dauern wird, sich hier sich alles zusammenzulesen. Und ich habe mir im Vorfeld auch die ein oder andere Zusammenfassung zu Trades of Cold Steel 2 angeguckt, aber das wird in-game hier wahrscheinlich noch ein bisschen besser auf den Punkt gebracht. Gucken wir mal, was uns hier so erzählt wird. Trades of Cold Steel Summary. Prologue. The Way to Thors. Ja, ich dachte für einen kurzen Moment, die würden das vielleicht selber vertonen, aber ich mache das natürlich auch gerne selber. Prologue, The Way to Thors. Lang ist's her. Oh mein Gott, sehr lang ist das her. Teil 1, da weiß ich ja noch weniger von. Wobei Teil 1 eigentlich relativ kompakt in seinem Inhalt war. Ich glaube, das wird nicht so aufwendig, das zusammenzufassen. The year was 12/4 of the Septian calendar, and all across Erebonia spring was in bloom. At the esteemed Thors Military Academy situated on the outskirts of the imperial capital, a new class was founded. It would be known as Class 7 and was composed of 9 promising young men and women who demonstrated considerable aptitude for the Arcus, a sophisticated new type of battle augment. Sogar mit Bildern. Rean Schwarzer, son of a ruling lord from the remote region of Emir. Alisa Reinford, daughter of the chairman of Erebonia's largest industrial corporation. Elliot Craig, son of a celebrated general and a kind-hearted boy who harbored dreams of becoming a musician. Laura S. Arseid, the daughter of a renowned military family tracing its lineage back to the knights of old. Machias Regnitz, the son of Heimdall's imperial governor. Emma Millstein haben sie glaube ich ausgesprochen, the class president and the academy's highest scorer on the entrance exam. Jusis Albarea, son of Duke Albarea, head of one of the empire's 4 great houses. Fie Claussell, a former Jäger with extraordinary strength and agility. And Gaius Worzel, an exchange student from the land of Nord, bordering the Empire to the north. Ah, da ist sie, ich habe sie so vermisst. Also die anderen auch natürlich, aber sie und Laura, das waren ja immer so meine Mädels aus den Vorgängern. Gathered together by the homeroom teacher, Sara Valestein, they were put through a difficult trial. Some were quick to work together, others less so, but eventually all were able to surmount the challenge they faced. They were then asked to decide whether, knowing the difficulty of the curriculum, they still wished to be part of Class 7. Each had his or her own reasons, but each ultimately heeded the call, and that day Thors' newest class began. Ja, damit fing all der Zauber an, nicht wahr? Chapter 1, Unconventional Studies. Die werden aber jetzt nicht jede einzelne Field Study nochmal aufdröseln, oder? Die ist ja für den Gesamtkontext jetzt nicht unbedingt im Einzelnen wichtig. April came, and while the students of Class 7 were already grappling with their challenging coursework, they received a sudden announcement that they were to take part in an unusual program, a series of field studies. The class would be split into 2 groups, each sent to a different location in the Empire to assist the local townships. Group A went to the rural town of Seldrick, famous for its grand market. Through their tasks, they gained a greater understanding of one another, and all appeared to be going well on the surface. But that came to a sudden halt when they discovered that 2 market stalls had been vandalized during the still of night. Determined to find the culprit, Group A made their way to the Lunaria Nature Park. They found and apprehended the group of bandits responsible, but were immediately surrounded by the provincial army, who turned out to be in league with the bandits all along. Just as the situation grew more dire by the second, the railway military police, led by the notoriously brilliant Captain Clare, swiftly arrived at the scene. It was thanks to their timely intervention that the provincial army was forced to retreat, and the bandits were duly oder so arrested for their crimes. Their very first field study now at end, Group A boarded the train back to Trista and reflected on the events that transpired over the course of their stay. It was then that Rean confessed to his fellow classmates that he was the adopted son of a baron, a noble. Surprising though it may have been, not a single one among them thought any less of him for it. The evening concluded with smiles, each of them blissfully unaware of the 2 ominous figures who were watching their train head into the distance. Okay, krass, also wie groß der Detailgrad dieser Zusammenfassung ist, aber man durchlebt das hier gerade auf schöne Art und Weise, finde ich, neu. Also ich finde das gut. Wie gesagt, wen das nicht interessiert, guckt in die Videobeschreibung, da packe ich die Zeitstempel rein, falls ihr bestimmte Chapter oder Abschnitte nicht sehen wollt. May came, filling the town of Trista with greenery. Meanwhile, Class 7's schedule was growing busier by the day. Rean found himself at odds with Machias for keeping his noble status a secret. But he also learned more about his fellow classmates, including the fact that Emma was caring for a black cat named Celine. As the days passed, the time for their second field study arrived, and the newly organized Group A was assigned to Jusis' hometown of Bereahard. Oh Gott, Bereahard, schon ewig nicht mehr gehört und gelesen. This would hardly make the trip easy, however, as the utterly incompatible Jusis and Machias were forced to be part of the same team yet again. To the surprise of no one, the boys were bickering in record time. The trivial squabbles, one after another, resulted in a number of setbacks, something they became keenly aware of when one particularly heated argument resulted in Rean sustaining injury during battle. Despite these moments of frustration, they at least felt they would be able to fully complete their assigned tasks. To add to the growing unpleasantness, however, they were given a stark reminder of how grave the tensions between the nobles and the reformist faction were, when they discovered that the provincial army had been greatly expanding its armaments. With neither of them able to get much sleep that night, Jusis revealed to Rean that his background was less perfect than anyone in Class 7 realized. His mother was a commoner, making him the mere bastard son of Duke Albarea. Machias, overhearing this, stepped forward the next morning to make peace, and the field study finally seemed as if it would go smoothly. No sooner had reconciliation happened was Jusis abruptly summoned to his home, leaving the rest of the group no choice but to proceed without him. They completed their morning tasks outside the city with little trouble, but immediately upon returning to Bereahat, Machias was arrested without probable cause by the provincial army. Rean, Emma, and Fie agreed that rescuing him was to be their top priority. As the three were discussing just how to go about that, they learned from a bracer passing through, Toval, of a waterway that led precisely to where Machias was being held. Conveniently, the complex waterway led to quite a few places, including the Albarea mansion. They were soon reunited with Jusis this way, who had learned what happened and escaped from his home to set things right. As they approached the massive, heavy door, Fie, who revealed she was once a Jäger, made the impassable easily passable, and they were able to successfully free Machias from his cell. Ich erinnere mich noch gut an diese Szene, an alles bisher, auch an das Gespräch nachts zwischen Rean und Jusis. On their way out, they were cornered by two large dog-like beasts from the military. However, thanks in no small part to Jusis and Machias forming a successful combat link, they emerged victorious. But their celebrations were short-lived as they were surrounded yet again, only this time it was by the provincial army. Even having Jusis at their side gained them no sympathy. It was only when Instructor Sara and Rufus, Jusis' older brother, appeared that they were saved from peril. Group A's field study had come to an end, but on a much less positive note compared to their first. On the train, they gloomily discussed the factional conflict Erebonia faced. Instructor Sara attempted to cheer them up, and succeeded, even if it was more because they were laughing at her than with her. Meanwhile, a mysterious young girl with a silver puppet nonchalantly watched them depart. Ah ja, das war der erste Auftritt von Millium, hieß sie, glaube ich. Beyond the Railways, Chapter 3. Jawohl, gib uns. June heralded the beginning of Class 7's first midterms, as well as the onset of Trista's rainy season. Ich kann nie lesen, oh mein Gott. Ich muss mich erstmal wieder ein bisschen warm sprechen, Leute. Ich habe schon ewig nichts mehr Let's Played mit englischen Texten. In the midst of this, the Reinford family's maid, Sharon, was appointed caretaker of Class 7's dormitory. And with her came the revelation that Elisa was the daughter of the Reinford Company's chairman. Oh, die erinnere ich mich auch, das sind diese arroganten Schnösel damals gewesen in der Academy. All performing to the best of their abilities, Class 7 scored better in the midterms than any other class. This news didn't go down well with the nobles of Class 1, of course, and the besmirched upper-class students challenged Class 7 to a duel. Class 7 was victorious here as well, leading to a tirade of insults from Patrick Higharms that were only stopped by Gaius' interference. Patrick Higharms, den Namen hätte ich niemals wieder zusammenbekommen. Aber danke für den Refresher. The time had come for Class 7 to prepare for their next field study, and Group A's latest destination was the North Highlands, Gaius' homeland. The journey was exceptionally longer than anywhere they had been previously, and while briefly stopped at Ruhr Station, they encountered Elisa's mother, Chairman Irina. After a grueling 8-hour journey, they finally reached the North Highlands to the northeast. Die habe ich geliebt, die Field Study. Das war, glaube ich, eine meiner liebsten. It was plain to see how Gaius had grown up with the endless patience and kindness upon meeting his family, who gave Group A a warm welcome. After a night of sleep, they took off on horseback to begin working. The Highlands were as vast as they were beautiful, and their time spent there was both challenging and rewarding in equal measure. During their stay, they also happened to meet the former chairman of the Reinford group, Gwyn Reinford, Elisa's grandfather. Father. At night, while gazing at the stars together, Elisa privately told Rean about the discord between her and her mother, as well about when she lost her father. Gloomy as her expression was in the beginning, she felt a weight being lifted off her shoulders the longer they talked, and it was soon replaced by her usual sweet smile. Unfortunately, the night ended with her cheeks turning as red as their uniforms when she realized the classmates had overheard part of her and Rean's conversation. The next morning, they were informed that the watchtower surveying the border of the Calvert Republic had come under attack. The previously peaceful highlands suddenly became tense, with airships from both sides ominously circling the skies. And knowing that war could break out over a misunderstanding at any moment, Group A motioned to conduct their own inquiry into a true culprits responsible. They found out just who those culprits were from an unlikely source, Millium, the strange girl accompanied by the silver puppet. It was her help that made their capture swift and decisive, although the man pulling the strings, known as G or Gideon, managed to make his escape. Thanks to both Group A and the efforts of the Intelligence Division's Captain Lecter, war was successfully averted. Captain Lecter quickly arrived to take control of the situation and just as quickly left, taking Millium with him. It was then discovered that she was also from the Intelligence Division. Later that evening, Sara and Sharon both witnessed G on a masked man departing on a jet black airship. The next morning, Group A bade a sad farewell to Gaius' family and Gwyn. Their field study was over. They left the land of Nord behind, knowing full well that the experience had been one they would never forget. Ja, es war schon eins der coolsten Kapitel. Irgendwie vermisse ich gerade Teil 1 voll und mir wird gerade wieder klar, wie sensationell gut dieser erste Teil einfach schon war. Im Midsummers Revels. Ich habe gerade Reviews gelesen, aber das passt nicht. July had come and preparations were underway for Heimdall's month-late celebration of the summer festival. At the academy, the addition of swimming lessons to the schedule put a spring into the step of Rean and his friends. However, Laura and Fie's already strained relationship was reaching a breaking point due to the gulf between their beliefs. A surprise visit from Elise, Rean's younger sister, led to an argument between the adoptive siblings. And when Rean saw her in danger soon after, he lost control of a strange power that dwelt within him. Fortunately, Crow stepped in to help, and ultimately no one was harmed in the incident. The time came for the month's field study. Unlike past studies, both groups were assigned to the same location, the Erebonian capital of Heimdall. They worked their way through the tasks given to them by Governor Regnitz, Machias' father. And a show of strength by Elliot led Laura and Fie to settle their differences through a formal duel. After the battle, Fie revealed that the Jäger Corps she belonged to was among the strongest and was called Zephyr. After opening up to one another, their uncomfortable feud seemed to be put to rest once and for all, much to Machias and Rean's joy. The next day, a visit to Machias' house led him to reveal some of his own past. Machias concluded his story by telling his classmates that his hate for the nobility was slowly subsiding, something everyone warmly welcomed. Oder subsiding? Bin mir nicht sicher. Ich werde auch in diesem Let's Play wahrscheinlich wieder viel nachschlagen, vor allen Dingen, wenn sich Wörter wiederholen, bei denen ich mir unsicher bin. Now back to work, Class 7 received a series of frustrating and obtuse riddles from the famed Phantom Thief B, challenging them to find something he had delightfully stolen, the Crimson Tiara. Undaunted, they rose to the challenge. Once they had recovered the tiara, they received a call from Instructor Sara. She asked them to gather at St. Estrella Girls' School, the school that young Elise attended. Ja, mit ihrer komischen Freundin hier, wo mich dieser Song im Hintergrund so genervt hat, weil der so dudelig war. Auch das weiß ich noch. They even met with Elise before the gates of Saint Estrella. And she elegantly led them to a stunning indoor rose garden. More stunning than the rose garden, however, was the sight of the Princess of Erebonia, Elfin Reiser Anor. Even Prince Oliver, chairman of Thors' board of directors, came to meet them. That night, the prince informed them of the reasons that their class was put together. He explained his desire to cultivate the youth of tomorrow, those who could overcome the conflicts in the world. However, he warned that the other directors had their own ideas on what they wanted from Class 7. It was for that reason they were all left pondering harder than ever about what they could and should do as a class. Several other strange conversations followed, such as when they found out Sara had once been a bracer, or how Rean was invited to be Elfin's dance partner. And finally, they were asked for help with an important mission by Captain Claire. Specifically, they were asked to help with security for the festival, which was believed to be the target of terrorists. The next morning, they began their patrols of the festival as requested. The parade came to an end without incident, but just as they thought they were in the clear, chaos erupted in Drycoat's Plaza. Rean and friends quickly realized this was a diversion and, leaving Towa in charge, they hurried to Princess Elfin's side. Upon arriving, they found the garden party where she was in attendance under attack by the terrorists. War das die Szene, wo wir diese 2 Krokodile auch besiegt haben in diesem gläsernen Gebäude? The attack was led once again by G, and Princess Elfin and Elise were both taken hostage. Rean's party pursued them beneath the city. G summoned a mighty bone dragon, and while quite the challenge, they were able to defeat it. Einer der coolsten Bosskämpfe aus dem ersten Teil, finde ich. Though the dragon had fallen, 3 more members of the terrorist group made their appearance, V, S, and their leader C. C challenged Rean, Laura, and Fie to a duel, and his victory proved both swift and effortless. It wasn't long before the railway military police found their way into the catacombs as well, and the terrorists fled the scene, triggering an explosive in the process. As they made their escape, they finally announced their organization's name, the Imperial Liberation Front. Oh ja, der Name fiel seitdem oft. The 3-day-long festival came to an end, and Class 7 readied themselves to return to Trista. They were seen off by Princess Elfin, Elise, Governor Regnitz, and Crown Prince Cedric. But before they could leave, an unexpected man arrived to also bid them farewell. Ja, daran erinnere ich mich auch noch. It was the Blood and Iron Chancellor, Gilead Osborne, the man behind driving the Bracer Guild from most of Erebonia. Disregarding that Sara was clearly not happy to see him, he gave his own encouragement to Class 7. Telling them, "Nurture the bonds you share and train our bodies and wills of steel." As he spoke, Rean felt an aching in the left side of his chest, causing Elise to look on with concern. Wir wissen ja seit Ende von Teil 2 ein bisschen mehr, aber wir gucken mal, das kommt bestimmt auch noch in der Zusammenfassung, worauf ich hinaus will. Signs and Omens, Chapter 5. The heat of August beat down upon Trista, but none of Class 7's nobles elected to return home, as was their right. So it was that all were present to greet 2 surprising mid-year additions to the class. The first was a familiar face. Second-year student Crow Armbrust was forced to join their ranks in order to make up credits, while the second, young Millium Orion, was an operator from the intelligence division they had met in Nord. Contrary to expectations, it wasn't long before Millium fit in so well. It was as if she had always been there. The time for their next field study came, and Group A was sent to Laura's hometown of Legram. And once they completed their field study tasks, ist eigentlich gar nicht so schwer, they were instructed to meet with Group B and travel to Garrelia Fortress. In Legram, they were reunited with Toval and helped to train several Arseid school students. Rean also had the chance to duel Laura's father, Viscount Arseid, also widely known as the Radiant Blade Master. The Viscount sensed Rean's fear of using his hidden abilities and forced him into utilizing them anyway. And through this, he taught him the importance of accepting yourself for who you are. The next day, the noble faction's leader, Duke Cayenne, paid a surprise visit to the town. Troubled by recent developments in the faction, Viscount Arseid left Legram with Toval, and Group A was left to look after the town while completing their remaining tasks. Guck, geht doch. That night, they had to travel to a nearby castle to rescue 2 young children who had wandered inside its perilous corridors. Thanks to Emma's knowledge of the occult and the timely aid of a mysterious knight, they managed to do so. Das war so ein geiler Dungeon. The next morning, they departed Legram as per their schedule and made their way to Seldic Station to meet with Group B. There, they saw a special train taking Chancellor Osborne and Prince Olivert to the trade conference in Crossbell. To Rean's surprise, he saw it pass in slow motion as he could clearly see Osborne, Olivert, and Towa on board. The 2 groups reunited soon thereafter, finally making their way towards Garrelia Fortress. The fortress stood as a vast wall between Erebonia and its longtime enemy, the Calvert Republic, while also possessing 2 huge railway guns capable of targeting Crossbell City, which stood between the two. Upon arriving, they were shown inside by Major Neidhart, the military science instructor at the academy. Den habe ich schon wieder voll vergessen. They soon met Elliot's father, Lieutenant General Craig, and witnessed a military exercise. They were stunned by the overwhelming power the weaponry on display possessed. In the end, each of them left with the sinking feel that all the combat skills they were learning at Thors were for naught. Once they recovered from the shock of the previous day's events, they were given a lecture by Sara and Neidhart. They were soon bombarded with the news of terrorists attacking Crossbell, specifically the site of the trade conference. And no sooner had they heard this did the fortress itself come under attack by out-of-control unmanned tanks. This was followed by the arrival of 2 black airships belonging to the Imperial Liberation Front. Amid the chaos, Class 7 resolved to aid Sara and Neidhart in subduing the terrorists. They learned their aim was to activate the 2 railway guns and use them to attack the trade conference, and that by doing so, they intended to bury Chancellor Osborne, with little concern over how many innocents died with him. After a fierce battle, Group A defeated S, now known as Scarlet, one of the terrorist executives. Meanwhile, Group B defeated ich wollte gerade sagen 5, weil ich das als römische Zahl gelesen habe, revealed to be Vulcan oder Vulkan, ich weiß nicht mehr, wie man den richtig ausgesprochen hat, Vulkan, glaube ich, and together they were able to prevent the worst case scenario. Regrettably, both terrorist executives were allowed to escape by the sudden arrival of an airship, and the voice of their leader, C, delivered a chilling warning of their next attack before the airship took to the skies. Genau, hier hat's aufgehört. Chapter 6, Progressive Chaos. Ich glaube, das trifft's ganz gut, auch wenn ich die Details nicht mehr weiß. In September, Thors board of directors convened for their regular meeting. The 3 directors, each related to a member of Class 7, debated how the academy ought to be run. They ended up voting on whether Class 7 would continue their field studies in light of the events at Guerrilla Fortress. Punkt. Prince Oliver delivered a rousing speech in favor of their continuation. And in the end, all 3 directors consented, paving the way for September's field study to go forward. Meanwhile, all of Thors was in the midst of preparing for the Academy Festival that was scheduled for the end of October. And Class 7 was struggling to think of something that they could do for it with their small numbers. Eventually, inspiration came to them in the form of a hint from Towa. Their contribution would be a live musical performance on stage. The day came for the next field study to begin, and they were summoned to the Academy field. Once there, they heard an unusual, surprising sound. A crimson airship hovered above them. Its name was the Courageous, and notably on board were Prince Oliver, Toll, and its captain, Viscount Arseid. It was decided that Class 7 was to be taken to their field study location by airship, and everyone stepped on board. After the Courageous was shown off to the people of Heimdall, it flew to Ruhr, where Group A alighted. Ruhr was a large industrial city, home to the Reinford Group's corporate HQ and Reinford family residence. Once there, they set about working through the tasks Elisa's mother, Irina Reinford, gave them. But later that day, they came upon a dire conflict between the provincial army and railway military police. Rufus and Captain Clare's appearance prevented things from escalating further, but it was clear that something was amiss. That night, Elisa's mother was forced to cancel dining with them, irritating Elisa to no end. Elisa later revealed to Rean more about her family and her concerns relating to Irina's destructive work ethic. No sooner had they finished speaking did Rean receive a call from Captain Clare, who asked if the two could meet privately at a nearby bar. He agreed, but not before escaping Fie's notice. Rean spotted her as he left the building, and the two decided to meet Captain Clare together. The captain informed them of conflicts within the Reinford group, as well as expressed how there was a chance the RMP could personally investigate the matter. The next morning, die zeigen kein Bild aus der Bar, das hätte ich jetzt gern nochmal gesehen. Ich erinnere mich noch dran, habe ich jetzt trotzdem gern gesehen. Class 7 agreed to look into the matter of the conflicts themselves, along with their new field study tasks. While they were doing so, a more pressing problem arose, a fire at a military factory in town. And no sooner had that been resolved did they receive word that terrorists had occupied Saxon Iron Mine. The provincial army sealed the mine off under the pretext of protecting the hostages from being harmed. But it was clear to all that the true aim was to stop the railway and military police from going inside. While Group A pondered their options, Angelica and George arrived in the city after a long bike ride. Angelica believed her family was involved in all of this and that she had a duty to stand up and fight. They all agreed to help her, and Elisa went to see her mother to try and find another way into the mine. Irina, seeing her daughter's newfound determination, gave them a keycard, allowing them to sneak into the mine. They traveled through an underground passage connecting Ruhr and the mine and began searching for the miners. Partway through the mine, they found most of the hostages, and Crow volunteered to take them back to the surface with him. Thanks to George's guidance, they eventually reached the central control room, where they found Vulcan. He revealed that he had once been a Jäger, one that Fie herself knew of. They defeated him, but then the terrorist leader C appeared. Unlike their first bout in Heimdall, however, Group A was finally able to best C in battle. Der Kampf war nicht einfach, das weiß ich noch. However, C managed to escape, and in their place rose the familiar sight of the terrorists' black airship. At that moment, the RMP and Provincial Army made their way in, but they immediately began bickering amongst themselves. C's derisive words filled the area as the airship rose upwards, and they were all of a sudden replaced by the sound of a gunshot. Its engine hit, the airship exploded into a violent mess mid-air before their eyes. The Provincial Army saw this as a vital chance to take control of the scene, but those hopes were quickly dashed when Prince Olivert intervened. He effortlessly took command and ordered a full investigation into what happened. Any and all disputes were effectively dissolved. In addition, Captain Claire and Sharon had a cryptic conversation that very same night. Ah ja, okay, ich dachte, diese Conversation würde jetzt ja auch nochmal zusammengefasst, oder ist es die Intermission, die das abbildet? The following is a summary of events from the Trails of Cold Steel Drama CD. Returning Home. Kennen wir das? Haben wir das im Let's Play gesehen? Ich weiß gerade nicht mehr. Wir gucken mal. Intermission, Returning Home. Also ich meine, ich habe ja alles gespielt, was mir das Spiel offeriert hat seinerzeit, aber bin mir nicht mehr sicher. At the close of September, Class 7 was summoned to Wallflame Palace in Heimdall. There they were to be recognized for their bravery at both Garrelia Fortress and the Saxon Iron Mine. It turned out their presence had been requested by none other than the Emperor of Erebonia himself, Eugen III. They were granted an audience with him, Empress Priscilla, Princess Olivert and Cedric? Wieso Princess? Müsste da nicht Prince Olivert stehen? Ist das eine Anspielung auf irgendwas? Ich weiß es nicht. And Cedric and Princess Elfin. Oder ist es Princess, it's the Princess Room quasi. So könnte man das auch lesen, aber das ergibt ja inhaltlich keinen Sinn. Keine Ahnung. Mysteriös. During their visit, they also encountered Chancellor Osborne and Governor Regnitz, as well as the heads of the 4 great houses, Dukes Albarea and Cayenne, and Marquis Rogner and High Arms. Princess war als Plural gemeint, weil danach auch Cedric genannt wurde. Ja, jetzt, das ergibt Sinn. Sorry, das hat jetzt ein bisschen gedauert, aber ihr seht, es hat mich auch nicht losgelassen. Emperor Eugen invited Class 7 to take a short vacation in a hot springs town that had ties to the imperial family. That town was none other than Ymir, where Rean grew up. They went by special train followed by cable car for the last leg of the trip, and soon they found Ymir, which was full of fall foliage oder so. Upon arriving, they were shown to the Phoenix Wings, a gift from the imperial family, where they would stay for the duration of their trip. They left their belongings in their rooms, then held a meeting to figure out everyone's roles in a concert for the Academy Festival. And while some members of the group had objections, everyone eventually agreed to Rean, Elliot, and Krau's various proposals. Afterwards, Rean was reunited with his father, Baron Theo Schwarzer, and his mother, Lucia Schwarzer. They were not related to him by blood, but they welcomed him as warmly as any biological parents would. Rean's father gave him a letter from Master Kafai, who seemed aware that Rean was still hesitating. All his classmates could do was watch over him as he continued to do so. That night, after his classmates had gone to bed, Rean received a surprising request from Angelica. She told him that her father had forced her to withdraw from the academy, and as a parting gift, she asked him to accept her orbital bike. Unsure what to do, he was unable to answer immediately and decided to think about it in the open-air bath. Talking to Laura and Elisa, there eased his spirits, but as they spoke, he saw something that shocked him. It was snow, something he wouldn't have expected to see in early October. Snow continued to fall heavily well into the following morning, suggesting that something was amiss. Rean decided to find out what. In some ways, Rean took this as a chance to overcome a similar traumatic experience that had occurred 8 years prior. His classmates happily accompanied him without a second thought. Soon enough, they encountered a giant monster made of ice. After a fierce battle, they defeated it and came face to face with Bleu Blanc of Ouroboros. He was fascinated by the many mysteries surrounding Rean, even going so far as to taunt him. But Rean refused to be taken in by such pettiness, and Bleu Blanc was forced to retreat. In the end, they were able to stop the strange snow and return to Emir unharmed. As Baron Schwarzer bade farewell to them, he handed his son a scroll that he had received from Master Kafai. It was an 8-leaves, 1-blade intermediate level scroll, which would give Rean a new target to work for. They said their farewells and finally left for the trip back to the academy, with Rean feeling as though they had all grown greatly as a result of the experience. Ja, das werden wir erlebt haben. Das ist aber auch nicht optional, oder? Das ist nur so komisch beschrieben worden am Anfang. Final Chapter, put to the test. Final Chapter. Safely back from their brief trip to Emir, Rean and his classmates began practicing for their upcoming concert. Under the watchful eyes of Elliot and Crow, they put all they had into their practice sessions. And thanks in part to the fact that they weren't all complete amateurs, they were finally ready to perform. The time came for the preparatory day before the festival. Was ein Zungenbrecher. Ich glaube, ich habe das Wort noch nie gelesen. Auch wenn ich weiß, was das heißt. Rean chose a classmate to accompany him to collect the finished outfits from a boutique in Heimdall. But walking out with the outfits in tow, he ran into someone he wasn't expecting to see. It was the famous opera singer Vita Clotilde, also known as the Azure Diva. Though Rean was more familiar with her as Misty, the host of a radio program broadcast in Trista. Having met her once already, Rean took the chance to invite her to attend the festival and watch their concert. The time finally came for the 2-day-long festival to begin. Rean spent the first day helping the student council, visiting attractions with classmates in his spare time. As the day came to an end, Class 7 gathered for a final meeting to discuss the concert being held the next day. During their discussions, however, they heard the sound of a bell chiming from far away. The source of the chiming turned out to be the old schoolhouse that they had become so well acquainted with. Given permission by Sarah and Principal Van Dyke, they descended to the lowest floor. Each and every one of them were stunned by its new appearance. Guided by Emma and Celine, who seemed to know something, they resolved to restore the building back to normal. Oh yeah. Eventually they found themselves in what could only be described as an otherworldly battlefield, face to face with a monstrous black shadow. After a challenging battle, they were able to defeat it, overcoming the trial that it represented. They were transported and knocked out in the aftermath, but once they'd opened their eyes, they discovered the building was back to normal. Suddenly, a door that was before them opened. On the other side stood a giant humanoid, a 7-arched tall ash-colored knight. The next day, the second day of the festival began. Rean managed to put the knight out of his mind enough to focus on showing Elise, who had come to visit, around the academy campus. During that afternoon, the time finally came for their concert. Each of them gave their all to their performance, and they were able to finish both songs. When the audience feverishly called for an encore, Class 7 was more than prepared to perform a third. During the third song, the audience was invited to sing along, and the concert proved to be an immense success. After the concert, the after-party began. Rean thanked Crow for all that he had done for him. Encouraged by Elise, Rean also decided to spend some one-on-one time with someone close to him. Unfortunately, the party was brought to an abrupt end by a shocking proclamation from Principal Van Dyke. He appeared to tell them that Guerrilla Fortress in the east had vanished without a trace. A week passed since then, and the air in Erebonia was more tense than ever before. It was concluded that the fortress's disappearance was due to an attack by Crossbell State. And it was shortly announced that Chancellor Osborne would be making a speech to the nation at noon. Rean and his classmates chose to listen to the speech through a radio in their classroom. Only Crow was missing, having supposedly gone to Heimdall to hear the speech in person. The time for the speech finally came. Osborne's words were forceful and provocative, making it clear that it would end in a declaration of war. Not just against Crossbell, but against the Calvert Republic as well, who was believed to be backing the state. However, just as he was about to make that decisive declaration, the sound of a gunshot resounded throughout the skies of the capital. The left side of Osborne's chest was pierced, and he collapsed to the ground in a pool of his own blood. The spectators let out terrified screams as they watched in horror. The sniper who shot him was none other than C, the Imperial Liberation Front leader, who was believed to have met his aunt in Ruhr. And his true identity was revealed to be a former member of Class 7, Crow Ambrust. Meanwhile, the students of Thors were able to witness the whole string of events through the radio broadcast. At first, they were merely listening to what was happening, but then Misty spoke directly to them. After she spoke, the classroom was filled with the echo of an eerie chant, and a window into what was happening appeared before them. Emma shared details about Vida, the Witch of the Abyss, whom she described as something of a sister to her. However, they were all too shocked by what was happening to pay any real attention to her words. As they watched the glimmering visions of the capital before them, a giant silver airship appeared from above the clouds. From it began to fall countless humanoids, muss ich auch mal nachschlagen, hab jetzt keine Lust, all of which immediately set about taking over the city. They were 7-arched tall knights known as Panzer Soldates, made with modern orbital technology. The Noble Alliance had built them some time in advance, all in preparation for this day. The soldiers used their incredible mobility to overwhelm the main battle tanks guarding Heimdall. And in no time at all they reached Valflame Palace, making their occupation of the city complete. In command of that operation were members of Zephyr, the Jäger Corps that Fie once belonged to. Nearby, Vita Clotilde stood on top of Heimdall's opera house, blissfully watching the silver arc descend on the palace. She was met by Bleu Blanc, who praised her work, addressing her as as Ouroboros' second Angus. With an elegant smile, she accepted his words, then confidently issued a proclamation. The bells are tolling for crossbell and preparations here are complete. Still, even this grand an undertaking is but a jewel in a greater crown, the second stage of the Orpheus' final plan. The symphony awaits us. Let the second movement commence. Meanwhile, Rean and his classmates weren't allowed much time to process what they had just seen. Not long after their window on Heimdall closed, they realized that soldiers were fast approaching Trista too. Sarah, Neidhart, the principal, and several other instructors defended the west exit valiantly. Eventually, they also received the aid of Sharon, who revealed herself to be an enforcer of Ouroboros. But while they still had their hands full, another group of soldiers began approaching from east of the town. As such, Class 7 resolved to protect the east exit themselves. The battle for Trista began. First, Class 7 fought against a dragon soldat, and by aiming for its joints, they emerged victorious. But in a sad twist of fate, they were powerless to defeat the much stronger Spiegel unit the terrorist Scarlet was piloting. Rean resolved to use the power deep within him as a last resort. "Dost thou desire the power?" But before he could, he heard a voice resound in his mind. He was standing in a strange empty space. Before him stood Celine, who urged him to call the voice's name. Loudly and clearly, he did just that. "Heed my call, Valimar, the Ashen Knight!" With a bang, the Humanoid that... Ich muss jetzt gucken. Humanoid, eigentlich ganz einfach, wie Paranoid, das hätte von Anfang an meine Isitzbrücke sein können und sollen. With a bang, the humanoid that they had found in the old schoolhouse came flying through the air towards them. It landed and Rean entered its core along with Celine. Although he had never seen the inside of such a thing before, he instinctively knew how to pilot it, and with that knowledge he was able to easily best Scarlet's Spiegel. The air was filled with the cheers of his classmates, but they were soon silenced by a familiar voice. "Whoa, whoa, hold up just a sec, aren't you forgetting something?" It came from above. The source of the voice was a large blue humanoid, one similar to the Divine Knight Rean was piloting. It was the Azure Knight, Ordine, piloted by none other than Crow. Rean despaired at the thought of having to fight him after all the time they had spent together. He tried whatever he could to reason with him, desperately attempting to avoid any further conflict. Yet Crow refused to listen, and with a wry smile he declared that the Crow Rean thought he knew was never real. Nonetheless, Rean made one last-ditch attempt at trying to change his mind. "So that's the plan if you win, huh? But what about if I win?" Rean trusted that Crow would come back to him and the rest of Class 7 if he proved victorious, and the battle between the two Divine Knights began. The power of Crow's Azure Knight was immense. But Rean fought back as hard as he could, and he found himself able to fight on equal terms. Finally, Rean saw the decisive opening he'd been searching for. Enlightened domination. The Azure Knight fell to its knees from the impact of Valimar and Rean's attack. His classmates cried out with relief, but that relief was not to last. The next moment, the Azure Knight transformed, surging with mana. It drew closer to the Ashen Knight. Rean was stunned. All it took was a single hit from Ordine to send him flying backwards, defeated. His consciousness began to fade, and all he could do was wince in fear as the Azure Knight approached. "No, you don't!" Without hesitation, his classmates stood between him and Ordine in a protective stance. They didn't have a chance of defeating it, but they were determined not to let it draw any closer to Rean. Together they resolved to buy him the time to escape, believing that he could one day bring the war to an end. Rean tried to protest, but Celine ordered Valimar to retreat from the area. Rean cried out in objection, his consciousness growing even fainter. From outside, one of his close friends bade him a private farewell. It was clear from their voice how much they cared for him, how prepared they were to face anything, even death. Fighting back tears, Rean cried out to them as the Ashen Knight took to the sky. All he could do was watch from above as the hopeless battle began. "No, they need me! Let me stay!" His cries resounded endlessly throughout the crimson sky. His cries resounded. Okay. Ja, das war damals, weiß ich noch, so, ja, ich weiß nicht, so episch im Abschluss, dass ich damals eine absolute Ausnahme gemacht habe und direkt Teil 2 hinterhergeschoben habe als Let's Play. Normalerweise habe ich ja jahrelang immer Pausen gemacht zwischen den Franchises, um so ein bisschen, ja, Abwechslung auch reinzubringen, aber hier habe ich es tatsächlich damals nicht ausgehalten, Teil 2 nicht direkt hinterher zu schieben, und so ging es dann halt auch entsprechend weiter. Gucken wir mal. Das sieht ein bisschen überschaubarer aus auf den ersten Blick, aber das wird inhaltlich wahrscheinlich mindestens genauso umfangreich, wenn nicht sogar noch mehr. Prologue, The Depths of Despair. Die Musik im Hintergrund auch, da kommen so richtige Nostalgie-Kicks irgendwie rüber. Ich habe so Bock auf Teil 3. Heimdall, the capital of Erebonia. Chancellor Osborne's speech was silenced by the sound of a single gunshot ringing throughout the city. The man who pulled the trigger was none other than C, the enigmatic leader of the Imperial Liberation Front. But it was on this day that his identity was finally revealed. Crow Armbrust, a friend and a member of Class 7. Eigentlich auch ein Part von Class 7, ne, eine Zeit lang. With the Chancellor's fall, the Noble Alliance rose and seized control of the city. Thus began a bitter struggle between the Noble Alliance forces and the Imperial Army, the Erebonian Civil War. Not even Thors' military academy was safe from the fighting. Soon after taking Heimdall, the Noble Alliance set its sights on the academy. Thanks to Crow's help, Thor's first line of defense was quickly subdued. Class 7 rushed in to help their instructors, but even they were completely overwhelmed. Realizing they stood no chance against such an unstoppable force, they decided to put their lives on the line, all to give Rean a chance to escape. Not wanting to leave his friends behind, Rean desperately cried out for them, but Valimar continued to fly him farther away. Before long, his exhaustion and wounds overtook him. He slipped into unconsciousness. How much time had gone by since that fateful day? Upon coming to, Rean was instantly wrecked with frustration and self-loathing. Taking a moment to survey his new surroundings, he quickly realized he was somewhere in the Isengard mountain range. He also noticed Valimar silently kneeling nearby. Celine as well. She had been there the whole time, waiting for Rean to regain consciousness. The familiar relayed the situation to a still confused and panicking Rean. A month had passed since that fateful day. He was torn from his friends. On top of that, it was now impossible to return to the place he'd last seen them. Rean immediately began to make his way down from the mountains, spurred by his concern for their well-being. Caught between worry and frustration, he was in no mood to respond to any of Celine's attempts to speak with him. But their descent came to a sudden stop as they came face to face with a terrifying foe. A weapon not seen since the Dark Ages, a magic knight. Rean put up a valiant fight, yet was unable to best the Colossus on his own. Showing no pity for its struggling opponent, the magic knight raised its blade to deliver the final blow. But at the last moment, its mighty swing was interrupted by a powerful orbal art. The magic knight was thrown off balance and tumbled over the edge of the cliff, plummeting down the sheer mountain face. Rean's savior was none other than the bracer Toval. With him were Princess Elphin and Rean's sister Elise. With their appearance, the tension that had been keeping Rean going vanished, and he collapsed in exhaustion. When his eyes opened once more, he was greeted with a familiar sight, that of his own room. He was back home in Emir. The sights and sounds of his hometown brought back a flood of memories. After Rean had recovered, Toval and the others filled him in on everything that had happened over the past month. It was then his hopes were confirmed. Though they had been scattered and their whereabouts unknown, his friends were still safe. Once their discussion was over, Rean paid a visit to the local hot spring in order to collect his thoughts. Now was the time to figure out his next move, yet no matter how much he racked his brain, no solutions came to him. None of this would have happened if he had been strong enough to fight off the Noble Alliance forces, strong enough to protect his friends. As he assaulted himself with such harsh thoughts, Elise appeared and gave him some much-needed encouragement. Thanks to her, he was able to remember that in making sure he got away, his friends had each placed their faith in him. As Rean thought back to each of their faces, he realized not one of them had given up. Believing in the faith his friends had given him was just the motivation Rean needed. He resolved to search the country until he had reunited with every last one of them. However, the flames of war were upon him again before he knew it. While on an expedition outside the town, the group was paid a visit by the Witch of the Abyss, Vita Clotilde. She had appeared to give them a warning, though the sound of gunfire coming from Emir was proof it had come too late. Rushing back to the town, the group found it besieged by Jägers who had been hired by Duke Albarea of the Four Great Houses. The town was in a panic. In an attempt to protect his people, Rean's father tried to fight the Jägers but ended up sustaining a severe wound. Seeing this, a roar of rage and despair burst forth from Rean, echoing throughout the town. Driven by hatred, he lost himself in his power and ruthlessly dispatched the Jägers. Fortunately, Elise's intervention and the news that Baron Schwarzer was still alive were able to bring Rean back to his senses. There was little time for relief, however, as Vita showed herself once more. Apologizing for the incident, she made it clear to them that this was the result of Duke Albarea acting on his own. As a show of good faith, she erased the Jägers' memories of having found the town and cast a spell that would keep it safe for a time. This strange moment of kindness caught the group off guard. Just long enough for a girl in black riding a strange puppet to swoop down on them. Said puppet bore a striking resemblance to Millium's Argentlem. Spreche ich den richtig aus? Schon ewig her. Ergetlem. Ich weiß nicht mehr, wie ich den ausgesprochen habe. Ich brauche den mal wieder in einer Cutscene, dann höre ich mir das ab. The girl in black moved too quickly for anyone to react. And before they knew it, she had seized both Elise and Elfin. Unable to chase after them, all Rean could do was assure them that he'd come to their aid. He saw to himself he would keep this promise and reunite with his friends no matter what. With that vow lingering in his heart, he set off into a war-torn Erebonia. Ja, alle Hände voll zu tun. Hatten wir auch das ganze Spiel über. Act 1, Ashen Chronicles. Let's go. Soon after Rean found the resolve he needed to search for his missing friends, Elise and Elfin were kidnapped by the Noble Alliance. Swearing to save them, he made Ymir his base of operations in his search for his comrades. The group's first destination was the lively market town of Seldik. Upon arrival, it became clear they would need to tread carefully to avoid the watchful gaze of the Noble Alliance forces occupying the city. But following a set of clues to a windmill just outside town, Rean was ultimately able to reunite with Machias, Elliot, and Fie. Overjoyed to see one another again, they took some time to exchange information on what had happened since they were last together and what their next move should be. It was decided that they would try to find a way to the Guerrilla Proving Ground, where the 4th Armored Division was stationed. In doing so, they would learn both the state of the Imperial Army and the overall situation with the war. Understanding the importance of this, they set off. Slipping past the tight surveillance at a Noble Alliance checkpoint, they followed the railroad tracks and reached the ruins of Guerrilla Fortress. In awe of the gaping crater where the fortress once stood, they didn't have time to continue onward to the Proving Ground before coming under attack. To make matters worse, their foes were an especially formidable pair. Before them stood Trapmaster Zeno and Leonidas the Behemoth, regimental commanders of Zephyr, the Jäger Corps Fie grew up in, yeah. The group put everything they had into fighting the 2 combat specialists. A brief clash wasn't enough to drive them away though. Both of the Jägers seemed prepared to use their full power in round 2. Before they could, however, the battle was interrupted by a squad of Noble Alliance soldiers and Panzer Soldats. They were planning to launch a surprise attack on the Proving Ground. But in doing so, they happened to stumble upon Class 7's battle with the Jägers. The commander of the squad ordered Zeno and Leo to get out of their way. Though annoyed, the two obliged, choosing to watch what would come next from afar. In their place, Class 7 now faced a squad of fully armed Panzer Soldats. Rean was able to fend them off by summoning Valimar, but their greater number still gave them the advantage. Just when the situation seemed the most dire, a hearty roar reverberated through the battle, turning the situation on its head. Its owner was Elliot's father, Lieutenant General Craig, standing tall atop a tank. The 4th Armored Division followed behind him, launching a full frontal assault on the Noble Alliance troops. What's more, the Railway Military Police, led by Captain Claire herself, arrived to provide backup. With their aid, the Noble Alliance was swiftly repelled. And thus Class 7 was able to rendezvous with the 4th Armored Division. As a result, they were able to receive key information from Lieutenant General Craig himself. According to him, the Imperial Army was making a steady recovery, but had little info regarding the situation near Heimdall. He ended by suggesting the students stay with him and the Imperial Army, but Rean's priority lay in reuniting with the rest of Class 7. With that settled, the group set off towards their next destination. This time, they aimed for the North Highlands, situated at the northern part of the border between Erebonia and Calvert. According to Lieutenant General Zex Vander, the Noble Alliance and Calvert's army had joined forces to attack the Imperial Army's forces in the area. What's more, the watchtower had been occupied and was being used to jam any attempts to call for reinforcements. As things stood, it was only a matter of time before the gate of the Imperial Army was defending fell. At the same time, the group also learned that the members of their class who were there were fighting to protect the people of Nord. Following after them, the group was finally able to reunite with Gaius, Alisa, and Millium. Wanting to repay the people of Nord for taking them in, they had been planning to retake the watchtower. Upon hearing about this, Rean and the others were more than willing to help. They successfully executed their assault on the watchtower and were able to reach the jamming device on its roof. Stimmt, an den Kampf erinnere ich mich jetzt auch wieder. Ich muss nochmal kurz dazu erwähnen, Teil 1 habe ich halt zweimal gespielt, ne? Einmal privat und dann nochmal direkt als Let's Play hinterher. Deswegen ist die Erinnerung daran auch irgendwie besser. Teil 2, da hilft mir das gerade immens, das hier nochmal so zu rekapitulieren. What they hadn't planned for, however, was that Altina, the mysterious girl who had kidnapped Elise, would be waiting there for them. Standing at her side was one of Ouroboros' enforcers, Bleu Blanc. After briefly exchanging words, the two groups engaged in a fierce battle. The tide seemed to be in Class 7's favor, yet said tide turned when Bleu Blanc employed his shadow weaving technique to immobilize them. This left Rean with no choice but to rely on the strange power within him, yet just as he steeled himself to do so, a brilliant gleam shot through the watchtower's rooftop. Class 7 was suddenly freed from the shadow weaving by a series of metal wires. Their savior stood above them, looking down. It was Sharon Kreuger, another enforcer of Ouroboros and current mate of the Reinford family. With her on Class 7's side, their victory would be assured. Or so they thought, but Panzer soldiers belonging to the Noble Alliance forces returned to the watchtower soon after. Rean wasted no time in summoning Valimar and made quick work of them. Having witnessed Valimar in action, Bleu Blanc and Altina bade their farewells and retreated. With no foes left to stand in their way, Class 7 was successfully able to remove the jamming device from the watchtower. With this, the immediate threat to Nord was settled. With their job finished in Nord, Class 7 set its sights on the lakeside town of Legram. Asking around, they discovered supernatural occurrences had been reported in the nearby Lohengrin Castle. Arriving there, they met up with Laura and Emma, who had gone ahead to assess the situation. Together, the reunited classmates made quick work of the issue. On their way back, Emma confessed to the group her true identity as a member of the Hexen clan. She believed she had no right to remain a part of Class 7 after keeping such an important detail secret. Rean, however, felt differently. He pointed out she wasn't the only one in the group who had hidden their special circumstances. And even taking those into account, he was confident that their class was the finest Erebonia had to offer. That recognition was the small yet powerful push Emma needed. And with that, there was only one member of their class left to find, Jusis. Their search led the group to Bereahard, a pivotal location for the Noble Alliance forces and ruled by the Albarea family. Following Jusis' guidance, the group finally reunited with him in an airship stationed inside the city. However, his family's actions and position in the Noble Alliance weighed heavily on Jusis's mind. Feeling bound by his duty as a noble and guilty over the wrongs his family had committed, he claimed it was impossible for him to rejoin his former classmates. Hearing this, Rean posed a question. What were Jusis's personal feelings on the matter? Rean's pointed question brought Jusis back to his senses, but something was still causing him hesitation. He requested a duel between himself and Rean. Rean accepted, and they proceeded to lock blades with one another. Though the battle was close, Rean was eventually able to best Jusis. Through this battle, Jusis finally gained the determination he needed to stand against his family and rejoin his friends. As always, though, things didn't proceed quite so smoothly. Before they could finish their celebrations, 2 agents of Ouroboros made their presence known. Duvali. Ja, stimmt, die gab's ja auch noch. One was Duvali the Swift, head knight of the Stahlritter. The other was MacBurn, known as the Almighty Conflagration and arguably the Society's mightiest member. They had been dispatched to restrain Class 7, leaving the group with little choice but to fight. But despite the students' best efforts, the difference in power between them was just too great. Just as all hope seemed lost, a familiar voice rang out above them. Ta-da! Dropping into the scene in a blaze of her namesake purple lightning was none other than Sara Valestein, former A-rank bracer and Class 7's homeroom teacher. With her in the picture, MacBurn's motivation to fight was set ablaze. Another clash seemed unavoidable, but was interrupted by the arrival of yet another party. This time it was Duke Albarea, accompanied by a squad of panzer soldiers. He had come in pursuit of his son Jusis. Their appearance doused MacBurn's enthusiasm, causing him and a distraught Duvali to leave. With that, the only foes left to oppose Class 7 were Duke Albaraya's soldiers. Calling upon Valimar once more, Rean made short work of them. Once done, they wasted no time in leaving Bareahard through the spirit path. Jusis bid his outraged father farewell before vanishing with the rest of his classmates. With another challenge safely overcome, Class 7 had, with one exception, finally reunited. After returning to Emir and celebrating this feat, they gathered to decide their plans from there on. After much discussion, they agreed they would act as a third party, one affiliated with neither the Imperial Army nor the Noble Alliance. However, they weren't able to decide what they wanted to accomplish by forming this third faction. In the midst of their discussion, a voice rang out through the room, one they'd have rather not heard at such a time. "Well, doesn't this look fun? Mind if I join in?" A projection of Vida appeared before them, accompanied by the roar of a massive engine. One look out the window was enough to make its source clear. The Pantagruel, the Noble Alliance's flagship, was hovering above the town. The group rushed outside to assess the situation. Assess. Das ist nicht das, was ich vorlesen wollte. Just in time to see Crow descending from the ship in Ordine. Accompanying him were Zephyr, members of Ouroboros, and Rufus. Desperate to protect his hometown, Rean piloted Valimar to fight Crow. Yet, in the end, he was barely able to put a scratch on him. The rest of Class 7 took up arms as well, but Rufus single-handedly dispatched them with similar ease. After making it crystal clear that they lacked the means to oppose him, Duke Cayenne revealed the reason for his visit. He had come to invite Rean aboard the Pantagruel. Should Rean acquiesce, the Noble Alliance would stay away from Emir for the remainder of the war. Despite their misgivings, the group had little choice but to accept. And thus Rean made his way aboard the Titanic ship. Intermission aboard the Pantagruel. Den Abschnitt habe ich irgendwie total gemocht, weil man da super viel über die einzelnen Charaktere, die auf der Seite der Noble Alliance gewesen sind, rausgefunden hat. Das weiß ich noch. After being strong-armed into coming aboard by Duke Cayenne, Rean found himself in the expansive halls of the Pantagruel. The Duke's goal in doing so was to have the opportunity to invite Rean to join the Noble Alliance. With Chancellor Osborne out of the picture, his priority lay in ending the war as swiftly as possible, or so he claimed. A goal which could be accomplished with much more ease if Rean agreed to join their ranks. Escorted to a private room to think it all over, Rean found himself at a loss over what to do. In the midst of his thoughts, Crow paid him an unexpected visit. Realizing that he hadn't changed much at all in spite of everything, Rean began to question him. Why did he loathe Chancellor Osborne so much? What led him to form the Imperial Liberation Front? Unable to resist Rean's earnest questions, Crow gave in and agreed to talk. At a young age, he had lost both his hometown and family to Osborne's schemes. He then wandered the country until he met Duke Cayenne. The two allied over their shared grudge for Osborne, and funded by the Duke, Crow sought out like-minded people to form the Imperial Liberation Front. During this time, Vida, who had been in contact with Duke Cayenne, guided Crow to become Ordine's Awakener. Finally, he enrolled himself in Thors as a cover for his true goal: to assassinate Gillian Osborne and rid Erebonia of him once and for all. Though Rean was visibly upset by the story, Crow insisted that he not let it influence his decision. Crow then took his leave, recommending Rean visit the ship's guest of honor room. Rean took the opportunity to wander around the ship, gathering information and speaking to the various people aboard before finally heading to the guest of honor's room. There he found none other than Princess Elphin. According to her, Elise was currently being held with the rest of the Imperial family. After they briefly exchanged information, Elphin posed a question. Would Rean join the Noble Alliance forces, or would he escape from the ship? Rean, however, did not yet have an answer for her. His heart was telling him not to side with the Noble Alliance under any circumstances. Yet he also felt a desire to end the war as soon as possible for Elise's sake. Hearing this, Elphin couldn't help but set Rean straight with a heartfelt speech. She told him he shouldn't use Elise as his excuse, not when Elise's greatest desire was for Rean to follow the path he believed in most. This opened Rean's eyes. He finally came to the realization that those he cherished felt the exact same way about him. And with that realization came further growth. The power he was once unable to control would no longer torment him. The only thing he had left to do was listen to his heart. And his heart's message was loud and clear. He would take Elphin and escape from the airship. With the help of his power, he was able to shake off all who stood in his way. Thus, they successfully reached the ship's deck. But Crow was already there, waiting for them. This led to a duel between Rean and Crow, no divine knights involved. Rean was able to use his power to gain the upper hand, but said power ran dry before he could land a decisive blow. What's worse, it gave time for those pursuing him to finally reach the deck too. With nowhere left to run, the situation couldn't have been any more dire. Suddenly, a red streak zoomed through the skies overhead. The Courageous had come to the rescue. A number of trusty allies leapt from the cruiser and landed on the deck of the Pantagruel. Emma teleported herself and the rest of Class 7 aboard as well. Rean was both relieved and stunned at this turn of events, but the biggest surprise had yet to come. Prince Olivert, owner of the Courageous and chairman of Thors, also made his appearance. With both sides having assembled formidable rosters of equal strength, it was concluded the battle would likely end in a draw. Appearing soon after, Vida suggested that the Noble Alliance take their leave to avoid a pointless battle. Thanks to her intervention, Rean and the others were able to leave the Pantagruel unscathed. Jawohl, sehr spannender Intermission-Abschnitt, aber das sind sie eigentlich alle. Act 2, The Awakening Lions. Ich bin gerade überrascht. Das hier, Finale wird wahrscheinlich mit Abstand am längsten dauern, weil das auch das längste Finale ist, was ich je in einem Videospiel erlebt habe. Guck mal, wie einfach knapp die Hälfte alles Finale ist und alles, was danach kommt. Spannend. So, egal. Act 2, The Awakening Lions. With Elfin successfully freed from the Noble Alliance's clutches, the group welcomed her aboard the Courageous. Rean was saved from the perilous situation aboard the Pantagruel thanks to his friends and allies coming to his rescue. In the end, the situation was diffused and both sides cautiously stepped away. With Elfin successfully freed from the Noble Alliance's clutches, the group welcomed her aboard the Courageous. Hab ich doch gerade schon mal gelesen. Once things were settled, everyone celebrated their various reunions. In addition to the princess, the group had also found Prince Olivert, who had been missing since the start of the Civil War, and Viscount Arseid, Laura's father. From there, the group began discussions on the state of the war. The main topic was one posed by Prince Olivert. What did the members of Class 7 intend to do from here on? Rean took it upon himself to answer in his classmates' stead. Class 7 had come face to face with the country's many problems during their field studies. And due to that experience, they were uniquely qualified to help the country through its new crisis. Hearing this, Prince Olivert decided to leave the Courageous to them. He intended to travel to Western Erebonia, where the fighting was fiercest, to help. Meanwhile, Eastern Erebonia would be left in Class 7's care. They were given full use of the Courageous, and Towa was named acting captain. Claire and Toval also left the group at this point, needing to return to their respective organizations. After seeing them off, the group took Towa's suggestion and narrowed down their goals to a more manageable what and how. For the former, they decided their first order of business should be to take back Thors from the Noble Alliance. As for the how, they would increase their numbers by finding their fellow students scattered through the country and bringing them on board the ship. Having settled on their new goal, the group put their all into accomplishing it. Sometime after this, they were contacted by Angelica, whose family belonged to the Noble Alliance forces. According to her, the Reinford company had been occupied by her uncle. What's more, Elisa's mother, Irina, was being confined within the building. Hearing this, the group wasted no time in heading to Ruhr. There, they met up with Angelica, who had formed something of a resistance. She had tried to convince her father to withdraw from the Noble Alliance, but to no avail. Instead, Machias Regnitz told her the only way she could convince him was by force. Having taken his words to heart, she had begun plans to rid Ruhr of the Noble Alliance well before Class 7 had even arrived. After convincing Angelica to let them help, Class 7's first order of business was to rescue Irina. Fortunately, Angelica had already located her. She was being held on a train currently stopped within the Saxon iron mine. After a series of fierce battles with the Jägers hired to guard her and a chance reunion with Sharon, they successfully freed Irina from her imprisonment. Continuing the momentum from this victory, they rode the train back to the RF building and proceeded to seize it from within. Machias Regnitz, ich habe schon voll vergessen, wie der aussieht. Gut, dass wir ihn hier nochmal zeigen. All that remained was Angelica's father, Machias Regnitz. Wishing to settle this on her own, Angelica engaged him in a one-on-one duel with panzer soldiers. And as the dust settled on the century's greatest family feud, Angelica stood tall as the victor. Accepting his defeat, Machias Regnitz announced his withdrawal from the war entirely. Losing the support of one of the four great houses would prove a heavy blow to the Noble Alliance. As had become the norm, however, things would not proceed quite so smoothly. Vulcan, a member of the Imperial Liberation Front, appeared in a gargantuan soldat to challenge Rean. Rean accepted this challenge, hoping to finally bring things to a close. While Vulcan's new model of panzer soldat proved a difficult foe, Rean was eventually able to best it. However, the battle put a significant strain on the massive soldat systems, putting it at risk of self-destructing. Vulcan ignored Rean's pleas for him to exit the machine, having already decided this would be his final resting place. Finally, the soldat's engine hit critical, resulting in a massive explosion. When the dust had cleared, there was no trace left of the machine or Vulcan. This tragic turn of events left a deep scar of regret within Rean's heart. He blamed himself for not saving Vulcan from his fate. But with the situation in Ruhr now under control, the group had to set their sights on their next target, Erebonia's spirit shrines. They did so in order to collect the pieces of Zemurian ore housed within the shrines. With enough ore, they could create a more powerful weapon for Valimar. However, one day, they received word from the 4th Armored Division that Celtic had been set ablaze, under orders from none other than Duke Albarea himself. Jusis attempted to leave the group to confront his father on his own, but the others argued that this was something they needed to handle together. No sooner had they steeled their resolve to act than they received a message from Rufus. He informed the group that the Noble Alliance took no part in the attack and did not condone the Duke's actions. He also told them that while he would not take direct action against his father, he could not let his actions pass. Knowing Rufus was just using them, Class 7 nonetheless decided to make use of his info and headed to Orruk's fort to restrain Duke Albarea. With backup from the 4th Armored Division and the RMP, they were able to reach the fort. Once they did, however, they were met by the Imperial Liberation Front's Scarlet. Much like Vulcan, she appeared piloting a unique type of panzer soldat, one specialized in speed. Also like Vulcan, she challenged Rean, hoping to find a resting place of her own. Rean, however, refused to allow events to repeat themselves. He accepted her challenge, but was determined to prevent her from dying. Though she was a formidable opponent, Rean was able to best her in the end. In a further parallel to Rean's last encounter with a member of the ILF, the strain of the battle caused her soldat's engine to begin to self-destruct. Without an ounce of hesitation, Rean dashed in. With a single precise slash, he tore off the soldat's cockpit and leapt away from the explosion. Though her machine was in pieces, Scarlet herself was unscathed. Rean had saved her. The group breathed a sigh of relief and headed into the fort. Rean, however, stayed behind to make sure Scarlet was okay. His relief at seeing she was fine was cut short by a familiar voice. It was Crow. He had come out of concern for his last remaining team member. Seeing she was safe, he left the group with some parting words of encouragement before flying off. After watching him leave, Rean turned his focus to the fort once more. He arrived just in time to bear witness to the end of Sara's solo battle against the Northern Jaegers. Having convinced them to leave, Sara stayed behind to rest. The rest of the group continued on ahead, eventually facing off against Duvali. Class 7 defeated her again, causing her to leave in a huff. Upon speaking with Duke Albarea, it was clear he had no remorse for his actions. Yet he quickly fell into despair upon learning all his allies had abandoned him. Having lost his will to go on, Duke Albarea was arrested by his own son. When this was announced, the soldiers still working under the Duke retreated, effectively ending House Albarea's role in the war. The Noble Alliance was shaken by the loss of yet another of the four great houses. In a final gambit, they gathered a majority of their forces around Heimdall. In doing so, they lowered their grip on the rest of the country, however. Trista was one such place affected by this turn of events. As soon as they heard Captain Clare's report, Class 7 knew this was the chance they had been waiting for. Wasting no time, they began their plan to retake the academy. Knowing a number of Panzer soldiers lurked in the area, Rean charged in with Valimar, making quick work of their foes. Thanks to that, they were able to effortlessly drive back the remnants of the Noble Alliance troops still stationed around Trista. With peace restored to the town, its residents gave their liberators a warm welcome home. But before they could celebrate, Class 7 still had one more task, freeing the academy itself. Arriving on the campus, they were greeted by the upper-class students who had been placed in charge of the academy. Led by Patrick, they had named themselves the Order of the Lion. Considering themselves Class 7's rivals, they wished to stake their pride and honor on a battle against them. After a fierce clash between the two groups of students, Class 7 proved victorious. Finally acknowledging Rean as an equal, Patrick disbanded the Order of the Lion and pledged the upper-class students' support to the courageous. Finally, after all their struggles, the group was able to take back the academy. With all the students of Thors united under one banner, the academy now truly represented a third path for Erebonia. Jawollo. Finale! Immer wenn das Licht ja einmal kurz aufleuchtet, dann mache ich immer kurze Räusper-Hustepausen oder hole mir einen Kaffee oder sowas. Das wisst ihr wahrscheinlich schon, aber nur der Vollständigkeit halber. Forward Relentlessly. Jawollo. Having successfully taken back the academy, the students took some time to celebrate together. The war itself was reaching its climax, however. As a result, the group received a request from the Imperial Army. They asked them to rescue the Imperial family and Elise. The Noble Alliance had been holding them captive at the Carroll Imperial Villa. The fact that the students weren't affiliated with either faction made them perfect for this task. Under Towa's command, they flew towards the villa the day after. They weren't alone, however. They were aided in reaching the villa by the Imperial Army's assault on Heimdall. They also had the help of not only the upper-class students, but all the other students they had recruited during their travels around the country. With the strength of a united Thors behind them, they were able to fight their way to the top floor of the villa. There, they found the people they had come to rescue. Before they could breathe a sigh of relief, however, the group was confronted by Altina once more. Millium took this chance to question her about the possibility of them being sisters. Altina confirmed her suspicions, claiming that the two of them were technically related. Though they were curious about what exactly the pair meant by this, the group's priority was rescuing the hostages. Altina and her puppet proved to be formidable foes, but Class 7 prevailed against them as they had all others before. In doing so, they were able to rescue the Imperial family and Governor Regnitz. And Rean was able to reunite with Elise at long last. Their job wasn't over yet though, as the group learned Duke Cayenne had taken Prince Cedric. Just as they tried to question Altina, however, a pillar of light erupted from the capital. It was centered where Wallflame Palace should have been, but in the palace's place rose something dark and twisted. The Infernal Castle. According to Emma, it was summoned forth by the Hexen clan's most forbidden incantation. Claire took the Imperial family under her care while Towa tried to get a better grasp on the situation. Rean, however, could feel Crow's presence within the castle. He knew he was waiting for them there. With that, Rean and the rest of Class 7 resolved to make their way into the imposing structure. Using Valimar to cut their way through its massive front door, they climbed upwards, fighting ever more powerful foes. Members of both Ouroboros and Zephyr stood in their way as well. Though the students put up valiant fights, their foes were just too strong. Well-timed aid from their more experienced allies allowed them to continue advancing through the castle, however. After a long climb, they finally reached the Vermilion Throne, their final destination. Crow and Vida were there waiting for them, as well as Duke Cayenne and the captive Cedric. Rean told Crow about the promise he made to Towa, Angelica, and George that he'd bring Crow back and make him graduate with them. Though Rean knew full well how unlikely it was, that only made him want to accomplish it all the more. Class 7's determination took Crow by surprise, but Duke Cayenne used the moment to make his presence known. He told the group of his ancestor, Emperor Orthros, the one known as the False Emperor during the War of the Lion. Cayenne's goal was to realize his ancestor's dream and make the country one ruled exclusively by the nobility. The group was astonished by his selfishness, prompting Rean to respond to the Duke's declaration. He told him they didn't care one way or the other about his dream, but the fact remained he had kidnapped the Crown Prince. Thus, in order to rescue him and settle things with Crow, Class 7 would do whatever it took to put a stop to Duke Cayenne's plans. Though Cayenne was visibly upset by this, Crow and Vida interrupted him by drawing their weapons and standing in Class 7's way. The time for talking was over. The final showdown had come. It would be no easy battle, however, as Crow and Vida showed surprising levels of teamwork. Class 7 couldn't afford to lose this fight though, far too much was riding on it. Mustering everything they had, they were eventually able to eke out a victory. This wasn't the end, however. Once the battle was over, both Rean and Crow jumped into their divine knights. It was up to them alone to finally settle the score. Pouring his feelings into his new blade, Rean stood face to face against Crow once more. Their battle pushed each of them well beyond their limits, but in the end it was Crow who was brought to his knees. It was an outcome so incredible the rest of Class 7 could scarcely believe it. All except for Sara. She broke their stunned silence and made the result official. Yep, I think the victor is clear. The battle goes to Rean. After being one step behind him for so long, Rean had finally scored a decisive victory over Crow. The rest of his comrades wasted no time surrounding and congratulating him once he had disembarked Valimar. Crow and Vida accepted their defeat, signaling the Noble Alliance's defeat and marking the end of the war. Or rather, that's how things should have gone, if not for a certain individual who refused to accept this outcome. Forcing the captive Cedric into its court, Duke Cayenne revived the entity responsible for the calamity 250 years prior. The Vermilion Apocalypse. It drew its power from the Vermilion Knight and the member of the Arna family house within it. Once the creature was freed, it wasted no time draining mana from all across the Empire. Thinking quickly, Vita activated a barrier that prevented Class 7 from suffering the ill effects of this power. But it was only a matter of time before the Apocalypse's overwhelming power broke through it. It was enough time for Crow to devise a strategy, however. Having Vida enchant his weapon, he dealt a significant blow to their foe, giving Class 7 an opening to rush in. Each gave every ounce of power in them to stand up to such a fearsome monstrosity. And after fighting it off for long enough, both Valimar and Ordine had recovered enough to join the fray. Their target now was the Vermilion Apocalypse's core, where Cedric was being held. Crow took it upon himself to draw the Vermilion Apocalypse's attention in order to give Rean an opening. In doing so, however, he allowed it to deal a blow that pierced Ordine's chest. Rean was shaken by the sight of this, yet Crow's words of encouragement were all he needed to close the distance to their target. After a mighty blow, he had succeeded in ripping the monstrosity's core from its chest. The creature bellowed out in agony before fading away for good. With that, Heimdall had been saved from impending disaster. Cedric himself was safe and sound too, which came as a huge relief to the group, but it wasn't long before they noticed Crow wasn't with them. They turned their attention to Ordine in search of him, only to see the Divine Knight had fallen to its knees. A pallid Crow emerged from within, clutching at his chest. Rushing to his aid, the group realized he had suffered a wound identical to Ordine's. Emma and Celine tried their best to heal him, but it only delayed the inevitable. As his life slipped through his grasp, he apologized to Rean for being unable to keep his promise to Towa and the others. He also gave parting words to each member of Class 7. And with his final breath, he asked that they live their lives with hope for the future. His last moments spent with his dear friends, he was able to pass in peace. He fell silent, leaving only the tearful sobs of his friends to echo through the halls. Yet before they could even recover, Duke Cayenne let out an enraged bellow. In a desperate final bid for victory, he held Cedric at knife point. Vita, less than pleased with his selfishness, attempted to quiet him by force. But before she could, an unexpected turn of events took place. Someone else dashed onto the scene, cutting down Vita's familiar, Graianos, without mercy and attacking the Azure Abyss herself. To everyone's surprise, it was none other than Rufus Albarea. He announced his intent to arrest both Duke Cayenne and Vita for their actions. Those present questioned why Rufus had chosen to appear then of all times, especially considering the Noble Alliance had already lost. Further, why was he trying to arrest people who were part of his own faction? Their questions were answered by the appearance of Lecter and Claire. And the answers would stun all present to silence, especially Jusis. Rufus Albarea had in fact been the primary member of the Iron Bloods, an organization under Osborne's direct control, all along. Duke Cayenne, equally stunned, asked what he stood to gain by revealing this after Osborne's death. He received his answer, though not from the person he expected. Und dann ist Osborne, glaube ich, auf die Bildfläche getreten. He would gain nothing, which is why it's rather fortunate I'm very much alive. The one who uttered those words made his appearance before anyone could truly process what he had said. The man who now stood before them was a man who should not have been alive. The man Crow had shot through the heart, Chancellor Gilead Osborne. All Rean and the others could manage to do was stare in awe at the events unfolding before them. Osborne's survival had been kept in utmost secret, to the point where no one, save Rufus, had the slightest clue. The mission Osborne had given him was to join the Noble Alliance and weaken it from within. Vida had her own questions on this matter, particularly regarding Altina, who had appeared with Osborne. Why did Osborne have full control over one of Ouroboros' 13 factories? What was his plan? Osborne's reply was simple and straightforward. He was going to take over Ouroboros' phantasmal blaze plan. Hearing this, Vida asked Rean and the others to take care of Crow before teleporting away. Osborne ordered Rufus to move forward with the occupation of Crossbell, then began to take his leave. Rean, however, refused to let him. Running up to him, he let out every emotion he had bottled up inside. Not in regard to any of these developments, but simply to the fact that Osborne was still alive. Why? Why are you still alive? Crow shot you. You're supposed to be dead. But in the end, he couldn't avenge his grandfather. He didn't get revenge on you. Was everything he did? Was his whole life for nothing? In response to Rean's furious outburst, Rufus informed him that Osborne's actions were tied to him as well. Upon hearing this, a memory buried deep within Rean's mind resurfaced. A memory from 12 years ago, just before he was adopted by the Schwarzer family. Rean, I pray you grow up strong and healthy. Oh, Aidios, if you're listening, hear me now. Please allow this child. As Rean stood there, dazed, pondering what this memory could possibly have meant, a ruthless grin spread across Osborne's face. I'm glad to finally see you again, my son. You've grown into a fine young man. Das war so ein krasser Moment. Indeed, the Empire will soon know of the Ashen Chevalier, the hero whose brave deeds allowed us to reclaim the capital. And who better to assist me than a national hero? Und ich glaube, in dieser Rolle starten wir dann auch in Teil 3 rein. Divertissement. Dismont, das klingt so französisch. Ich weiß nicht, wie man es richtig ausspricht. The Occupation. Das geht easy. Jawohl. Though Class 7 had helped bring the war to an end, Erebonia's fate remained firmly in Osborne's grasp. Osborne, the man shot through the heart in broad daylight, had reappeared as though nothing had happened. By his side was Rufus Albarea, who was revealed to have been the Ironblood's primary member all along. Together, they presented Rean as the hero who had put an end to the war that had ravaged Erebonia. 2 months later, Crossbell once again suffered from its position between the continent's 2 largest countries. An unexpectedly swift invasion from Erebonia left the city-state entirely under its control. Calvert, however, was not about to sit by and let its rival claim more land. The Republic sent its own troops in as a counter-offensive. They stood little chance against Erebonia's panzer soldiers, however, and were forced to retreat. Rean, having been named the Ashen Chevalier, was sent into Crossbell to help fend them off. During this time, a speech from the state's new ruler had been scheduled at Orcus Tower. Chancellor Osborne began the speech with the typical formalities. Following that, he named Rufus as Crossbell's first Governor General. Rufus' first act was to announce that the formerly independent state would be annexed into Erebonia. Crossbell's freedom had been stripped away, yet there were those who were working to overcome this new wall before them. Da sind sie. Oh mein Gott, das ist gerade so ein spannender Perspektivwechsel für mich, weil so habe ich die beiden kennengelernt. Und dann habe ich ja danach Zero und Azure noch gespielt in dem anderen Design, ne, mit bisschen mehr Background-Informationen dann. Aber das hier war am Anfang damals. Das waren wildfremde Leute und jetzt sind die so vertraut plötzlich. One was a member of the Crossbell State Police Department, Lloyd Bennings. The other was Rixia Mao, a woman who led a double life as both a performer in a famous troupe and as the legendary assassin Yin. They had made their way into Crossbell's underground network of tunnels in order to keep the state's top-secret info out of Erebonia's hands. With the help of Hayu, a mafia syndicate based in Calvert, they reached the Geofront's E-sector. Their plan was to copy the information from the core terminal, then reformat the terminal itself. Swiftly navigating the underground tunnels, it didn't take them long to reach their destination. Once they had set up the initialization unit they'd brought with them, all they had to do was wait for the process to finish. While relieved at first, it quickly faded when a voice called out to them from behind. Turning to look, the pair came face to face with a black-haired boy and a girl dressed in black. They had received a special order to stop Lloyd and Rishia's ploy. This was well within expectations, however, and Lloyd and Rishia decided to hold the mysterious duo off until the data wipe was done. Though their adversaries proved much stronger than their ages implied, Lloyd and Rishia pulled through. The battle seemed to take little toll on either the boy or girl, however. What's more, the girl pressed the boy to stop holding back. Agreeing, the boy began to focus his power. Rishia immediately noticed an aura of negative energy surrounding him. Both she and Lloyd braced themselves for an even fiercer battle, but just as they did, the initialization, das Wort ist so schwer, device finished its process. Lloyd and Rishia's strategy to buy time had been a success. In response, the boy's menacing energy dissipated. Unable to prevent the reformat, the boy and girl switched their objective. The boy raised his hand and called out a name, causing a huge machine to appear out of nowhere. He proceeded to board it, and without wasting a moment, he destroyed the terminal with one powerful swing. Lloyd quickly retrieved the initialization unit as the terminal collapsed into pieces. However, he and Rishia were now cornered by a machine that boasted just as much power as the Aeons they'd faced only a few months ago. Or so it seemed, until the boy allowed them to pass, telling them arrest warrants hadn't been issued for either of them. With little other choice, Lloyd and Rishia swallowed their pride and made their escape. But before they left, Lloyd turned and asked the boy a question. As I'm sure you already know, my name is Lloyd Bannings and I'm a police detective with the Crossbell State Police Department. What's your name? I'm with Thors Military Academy, Class 7. No. I'm a provisional military officer with the Crossbell government, Rean Schwarzer. Watching the two of them leave, Rean called Lecter to report his failure. Lecter spoke as though he were familiar with Lloyd and Rishia and accepted Rean's report without reprimanding him. Having done what was asked of him, Rean stated his intention to return before cutting off the transmission abruptly. Following that, he bid farewell to Altina. Though Rean was concerned over the way Altina thought of herself as a mere tool, his concern didn't seem to resonate with her. Before he left, he took one final glance in the direction Lloyd and Rishia had fled. Somewhat jealous of their ability to push forward through impossible odds and believe in the future, Rean took his leave from Crossbell. So. Epilogue, Winter's End. Having carried out his orders, Rean made his return to Trista. Upon arrival at the station, he came across Claire, who had been waiting there for him. As she was a member of the Ironbloods, though, all she received from Rean was a cold shoulder. Not because of anything she had personally done, but simply due to her relation to people like Rufus and Osborne. Claire herself was fully aware of this and could only see him off with pain in her heart. Rean felt regret over this, of course, but all he could do was continue walking and leave the station behind. Once he did, a wave of nostalgia washed over him as he looked out at Trista once more. The excitement he felt after he and his friends finally set it free from the Noble Alliance was something he could never forget. And yet, despite all that, despite seeing the welcoming side of the lino flowers blooming again, he couldn't help but feel cold. Not long after, the rest of Class 7 arrived to greet him. Together, they made their way back to the academy. The war had been brought to a swift close by Rufus's hand. The Noble Alliance had been dissolved following Duke Cayenne's arrest, and the remaining nobles made fully aware of the situation in Crossbell. After some persuasion, they had been convinced to throw their support behind Chancellor Osborne for fear of Calvert claiming the city-state for its own. With the country's military united under one banner, they had marched into Crossbell. Lacking its own military to stand against them, Crossbell fell within a day, which led to the present situation. Erebonia was at peace once more, and thus the members of Class 7 could return to being normal students. They went through their studies and tests as usual, taking care to enjoy what time they still had together as a class. Now and then, though, Rean couldn't help but think about Crow. His friends and classmates had settled on new goals and were each putting all they had towards achieving them. With their final free day around the corner, Rean found himself visiting the engineering building. There, he found George and Angelica, who each told him about their plans to travel around the continent. In the midst of their discussion, though, it was clear to them that Rean still felt guilt over participating in the battle over Crossbell. They reassured him that he didn't need to feel bad and that he had in fact played a key role in protecting Crossbell's citizens. Rean could feel tears welling up over their kindness, but he held them back for now. Following this, he paid a visit to the student council room. There, he found Towa fast asleep at her desk, having just finished her final duties as president. Rean watched her with a smile, thinking back to the last time he had found her like this. Suddenly, though, his reminiscing was interrupted by her mumbling. Angie. George Crow. The final name she uttered caused him to let out an involuntary gasp, which roused Towa from her slumber. Though unhappy that she was caught sleeping, she could tell at a glance that Rean didn't seem okay. Worried about him, she convinced him to sit down. She told him there was no need to endure everything that life threw at him, and that it was okay to sit and rest if things got too hard. Hearing this, the feelings Rean had been holding back burst forth. He confessed his regret over both losing Crow and breaking his promise to her. Like the others, Towa reassured him he had done everything he could. After letting everything out to Towa, his final walk home as a student of Thors awaited him. Whether by coincidence or fate, he bumped into his classmates at the gate and they all went home together. Casting their eyes upward to the falling lino flowers, they thought back to their first day at the academy. The time they'd spent together since then was truly a treasure to each of them. Their time left together was short, but they would make the most of it. Before they knew it, their final free day had dawned. Sensing an odd presence at the old schoolhouse, Rean made his way over to investigate. The moment he arrived, though, the presence mysteriously vanished. Just then, Toval, Elise, and Elfin all showed up. What's more, Claire was with them, having come as Elfin's escort. Both she and Rean took this opportunity to clear the air with one another, putting them on good terms once more. As the group chatted away, though, a bell suddenly rang out and the old schoolhouse began to glow. The rest of the group rushed over to find out what was going on. The inside of the building had become a boundless corridor swirling with energy. As Valimar was found in the old schoolhouse, Rean summoned him to see if he could remember anything. According to him, a trial separate from the one they had faced during the school festival had now been activated. Though the particulars of this new trial remained unclear, this was their chance to unravel the mysteries of 1,200 years ago. Once inside, they proceeded through to the end of the massive area. There they found a white shadow resembling a divine knight waiting for them. It claimed to govern the shadow trial, which was once sealed away but brought back due to the Infernal Castle's destruction. Class 7 had previously passed a legitimate trial that led to Rean becoming Valimar's Awakener. According to the Shadow, there was nothing more to gain by passing this Shadow trial. And yet, the group opted to take it regardless. They wanted to do one final act to mark the end of their time together as Class 7. Knowing this was their finale, the group spared no effort in their battle and proved victorious. Upon its defeat, the shadow dispersed into thousands of motes of light that fluttered down like lino petals. Together they had cleared another trial. Together they had created another unforgettable memory. As they celebrated their victory, it finally hit them that this would be the last time they would be able to do so. To everyone's surprise, Millium was the first to cry. Elisa was next. She went to hug Millium, which in turn opened the floodgates for the rest of the class. This was the first time the group had let out the emotions that had been building up in each of them, their sadness over having to split up. The rest of the days before the end of the school year flew by all too quickly, and then it was time for them to depart. Having gotten their grief out of the way, they each faced one another with brilliant smiles. Though they were parting ways, they believed they would one day meet again. Before leaving, though, they thanked Sara for everything she'd done for them, and teased her for crying in response. With that, it was truly time for them to leave. Each had something he or she wished to accomplish. As they all made their departure from Trista, only Rean remained. Having finished seeing his dear friends off, he returned to the academy. He knew the challenges that lay ahead for him. He would be forced to accept the government's orders for him and Valimar. But even so, he had made an important promise with his friends. Filled with determination to keep that promise, he strode forward towards his future. Boah, wir werden die wahrscheinlich alle nochmal wiedersehen. Aber die Frage ist, in welchen Kontexten, ne? Und ob man... Also die Zeiten werden halt nie wiederkommen, wo man als Class 7 so ein ganz normales Akademieleben vor sich hingelebt hat und gemeinsam an einem Strang gezogen hat. Ja, sehr interessant, sehr detailreich, sehr, sehr cool. Ich feiere das, dass sie das in dem Detail, gerade auch wenn das jetzt hier so ein riesen XXL-Video werden wird, einmal zusammengefasst haben. Vor allen Dingen das Gute ist, ich selber, aber auch andere können immer wieder hierhin zurückkehren, um sich da nochmal reinzulesen. Ne? Fand ich auf jeden Fall sehr hilfreich. Und mit den Charakterprofilen geht es jetzt weiter. Ich bin gespannt. Oh ja, in dem Detail gerade habe ich mir das genau so auch ausgemalt. Wir starten natürlich ganz am Anfang. Warte mal, nur rein aus Interesse vorab. Achso, das ist hier Others. Okay, ich dachte, die splitten das jetzt nochmal auf, dass du Rean mit Blick auf Teil 1 und mit Blick auf Teil 2 quasi nochmal separat hier betrachten kannst. Aber es macht natürlich Sinn, das zusammenzufassen. Aber was ist dann Keyfigures? Achso, das sind die Leute abseits von Class 7 quasi. Weil das wären für mich eigentlich die Keyfigures. Aber gut, wir gucken mal. Wir starten mit Rean, the motherfucking Schwarzer. The game's protagonist and a member of the original Class 7, Rean is the adopted son of Baron Schwarzer, the ruling lord of Emir in northern Erebonia. He is an intermediate-level practitioner of the Eastern School of Swordsmanship, 8 leaves, 1 blade. Though he once feared the strange power that slept within him, his time spent in Class 7 allowed him to overcome that fear. Ah, sogar mit anderem Bild und mit noch mehr Text. Okay, das ist aber echt schön gemacht, finde ich. Also mir gefällt das. Right before the Civil War, he located and became the Awakener of Valimar, the Ashen Knight. This gave him and his classmates the power they needed to bring the war to a swift end. In the final hours of the war, he learned the identity of his birth father and tragically lost an important friend. Once the war was over, he took an active role in the battles against Calvert and Crossbell, becoming famous as the Ashen Chevalier. After his classmates all graduated early to pursue their own goals, he was the only member of Class 7 to enter a second year at Thors. Then, 1 year later... da geht's dann ab. Das werden wir noch früh genug erfahren. Alisa Reinford. The daughter of the chairman of the Reinford Group, Erebonia's largest heavy industry manufacturer, like Rean, she was a member of the original Class 7. She can be somewhat critical towards others, but she's considerate at heart, and her natural naivete leaves her unable to abandon those in need. A hard worker, she is determined to find her own path in life without being reliant on her mother, as the two have trouble getting along with one another. Though she was initially conflicted about whether or not to graduate early after the Civil War, Rean convinced her that leaving to pursue her goals was for the best, knowing they'd be able to reunite before long. After graduating, she returned home to help the Reinford Group restructure itself. Given the nation's current political climate, the weapons manufacturer was expected to grow even larger in the coming years. Elliot Craig. The son of Craig the Red, a famous military general, a brilliant musician, Elliot initially wanted to study at a music academy, but he was forced to abandon that dream in favor of enrolling at Thors military academy after fierce objections from his father. He was something of a coward in the beginning, but overcoming countless trials as a member of Class 7 allowed him to become much more dependable, and he began to see his enrollment into Thors in a much more positive light. After the Civil War, he decided to transfer to a music academy in Heimdall with Rean's full support. Wanting to prove that music had an important role to play even in these dire times, he practiced hard to become a professional musician. Jawohl. Laura S. Arseid. The daughter of Viscount Arseid, the head of a famous military family in Erebonia. Like Rean, she fights using a sword, and their similarities in that regard led them to become good friends. While generally proud and possessing an open mind, she had a difficult time accepting things that strayed too far from her personal sense of justice. This was changed by meeting the former Jäger, Fie. Once she accepted their vastly different lifestyles, she was able to mature as a person. Following the end of the war, she left the academy to train in order to prepare herself for the trials ahead. Before she left, she and Rean made a promise to each hone their swordsmanship even further. Her first major goal was to learn the Arseid school's ultimate technique. As such, she had an intense regimen of training ahead. Machias Regnitz. The son of influential reformist figure and imperial governor Karl Regnitz. Bright and hard-working, he is as strict towards himself as he is towards others. He acted as the original Class 7's vice president. A traumatic experience in his past resulted in him becoming prejudiced towards the nobility, leading to constant conflicts with Jusis. However, belonging to Class 7 gave him the opportunity to spend time with nobles very much unlike the image of the nobility he had in his mind, and his prejudices slowly faded away. Following the end of the war, he started to become concerned about the rate at which the reformist faction was accumulating power. So, in order to be able to determine what kind of future the nation was headed for, he transferred to a political academy in Heimdall. Though it was unknown for its incredibly high barrier to entry, he had no difficulty on the entrance exam. Alles andere wäre auch komisch. Emma Millstein. The original Class 7's class president, and a girl who came from a remote region of Erebonia to attend Thors on a scholarship. Her grades were the highest in the year group, and due to her considerate nature, she is loved by all. However, she possesses a mysterious power that differs from orbal arts and seems to know more than she lets on about the strange goings-ons in Erebonia. She also owns a talking cat. In truth, she is a member of the Hexen clan, a reclusive group of witches. However, she chose to prioritize her position as a member of Class 7 during the war, lending them her knowledge and spells. Once the war was over, she predicted that dire happenings were afoot behind the scenes in Erebonia. In order to prepare for the days to come, she graduated from Thors early and returned to her village in order to perfect her spellcraft, with the goal of finding her prodigal sister, Vita Clotilde. Jusis Albarea. The second son of Duke Albarea, head of one of Erebonia's 4 great houses, he may sound arrogant and condescending thanks to his noble upbringing, but Jusis himself means no harm by this, as he is, more than anyone, aware of his own flaws and shortcomings. His mother was a commoner, which made his life as a noble far less easy than one would initially expect. He once opened up about his past to Rean, whose background was remarkably similar to his own, resulting in the two of them becoming closer. The 4 great houses' involvement in the Noble Alliance shook him to his core, but once he rejoined his friends in Class 7, he played a significant part in ending the war alongside them. With his father arrested for treason and his brother appointed as the first Governor-General of the Crossbell province following the war, he left to take up the mantle of his family as acting ruler of the Kreuzen province. Fie Claussell. A former Jäger with physical strength and agility far beyond what one would expect from someone of her age and stature, after the Jäger Corps she belonged to, Zephyr, was disbanded, she was taken in by Sara, the woman responsible for placing her in the original Class 7. While she initially had trouble getting along with Laura, whose background is the opposite of her own, they were eventually able to overcome their differences and become friends. This, along with her field studies and club activities, allowed her to grow as a person. She clashed with her fellow Corps members during the war and, in the process, learned that Zephyr's boss may actually still be alive. After much deliberation, she opted to leave the academy and follow Sara to the Bracer Guild in order to determine the truth behind what the other members of Zephyr had told her. Gaius Worzel. An exchange student from the North Highlands to the northeast of Erebonia, where he and his people lived a nomadic lifestyle. He chose to enroll at Thors to learn more about the world outside his homeland after accepting a recommendation from Lieutenant General Zex Vander of the Imperial Army. He is widely trusted by his peers, and the fact that he was born outside of Erebonia allows him to see things from a completely unbiased perspective. Following the end of the war, he learned that tensions between Erebonia and Calvert had escalated, a development that would quickly take its toll on his beloved homeland. This prompted him to leave the academy and turn to the North Highlands in the hopes of protecting the land he grew up in, promising to meet with his friends once again. Millium Orion. A girl known as the White Rabbit, Millium flies around Erebonia on board a strange puppet by the name of Argentlem. She is part of the Intelligence Division and a member of the Iron Bloods, an organization under the direct control of Chancellor Osborne. Despite being a mere 13 years old, she joined Class 7 as part of a top-secret mission. She is easy to like, but also has a tendency to carelessly reveal confidential information. The time she spent together with Class 7 during the war led her to understand sadness, an emotion she previously couldn't comprehend. As she cried for the first time, the others held her close. It was at that moment she fully accepted them as her true friends. Following the end of the war, she left the academy to return to her work as an agent of the Intelligence Division. Despite this, she kept in contact with the other members of Class 7 and decided to use her position in the division to look into the mysteries of her birth. Return. Thors Military Academy Others. Sara Valestein. Formerly the homeroom teacher of the original Class 7, Sara is also an A-ranked bracer known as the Purple Lightning, regarded as being attractive so long as she keeps her mouth shut. Das ist aber böse. She leads a very slovenly lifestyle, drinking beer at all hours of the day. That said, she would always provide Class 7 with proper guidance and a push in the right direction whenever they needed it. Born and raised in North Ambria, she was part of the Northern Jägers before she left and joined the Bracer Guild. During the war, she was forced to fight her former comrades, but through this, she was given the chance to finally face her past. After the war, she quit her job as a teacher and returned to being a bracer full-time. She also had a certain proposition for Fie. Hä? Waren das nur 2 Seiten? Bei den anderen waren es immer 3. Aber gut, die anderen waren ja auch die Hauptleute. Towa Herschel. Towa. The small, baby-faced former president of Thors Student Council. Intelligent, polite, friendly, and hardworking, she is loved by nobles and commoners alike. Despite her appearance, she was actually 1 year ahead of Class 7. As Student Council president, she helped them out as much possible, even going so far as to handle tasks that would normally fall under Sarah's purview. During the war, she was named acting captain of the Courageous. Under her command, the airship played a key role in bringing the war to an end. However, peace came at the cost of a dear friend's life. After her graduation, she declined the slew of job offers that came her way in favor of working with a number of NGOs. However, she eventually settled on a certain position that caught her eye. ... Ganz kryptisch. Angelica Rogner. The daughter of Machias Regnitz, head of one of the 4 great houses. She was 1 year ahead of Class 7 at Thors. Beautiful and eccentric, she acts nothing like a typical noble. Often seen clad in black leather, she spends her free time riding her orbal bike and stealing the hearts of ladies who catch her eye. Alongside Towa, Crow, and George, she played a vital part in watching over and helping the original Class 7. Unable to accept her father's role in the Civil War, she confronted him in a Panzer soldier-powered father-daughter spat in order to get him to recognize her beliefs. The loss she, Towa, and George suffered during the war was a great one, but together they were able to overcome their grief. Following this, she embarked on a journey to travel across the entire continent on her bike. Ja, so kennen wir sie. George Gnome. Ich glaube, ich höre seinen Nachnamen zum ersten Mal. One of Class 7's upper-classmen at Thors, his engineering skills are exceptional for his age, often causing his peers to rely on him. He single-handedly ran the Academy's engineering building and built Angelica's bike. He'd been friends with Crow, Towa, and Angelica since they were first years, and as a result, the 4 of them often worked together to help out in Academy events. Though he was originally a disciple of Professor Schmidt at the Ruhr Institute of Technology, he ended up enrolling at Thors after growing sick of his teacher's obstinate attitude. After he, Towa, and Angelica overcame the grief of losing a dear friend, he decided to go on a journey to learn from all the different factories on the continent. Patrick High Arms. The 3rd son of Marquis High Arms, head of one of Erebonia's 4 great houses, a member of the noble-only Class 1 at Thors Military Academy, he was none too pleased with Class 7 and its gathering of students from all social classes, treating them as rivals and mocking them at every turn. This rivalry eventually turns to mutual trust through the war, however, allowing him to play a part in ending it. Following the end of the war, he became a second-year student of Thors alongside Rean. Patrick spent his year supporting Rean through his forced absences and bettering himself as a member of the High Arms family. So, Thomas Lysander. Jetzt bin ich sehr gespannt, ob die hier in dem Text schon diesen Reveal mit einbringen, den wir hier am Ende dieses Videos auch nochmal sehen. Also diese besagte Szene, die man im NG Plus von Trades of Cold Steel 2 zu sehen bekommt. Vielleicht nimmt das jetzt hier ein bisschen was vorweg. Mal gucken. A former history instructor at Thors Military Academy, though his eccentric attitude and overzealousness for his subject gave him quite a reputation, his classes were well known for being both interesting and easy to understand. He watched over the students the Noble Alliance was searching for during the war, provided backup when needed, and played a pivotal role when Heimdall fell into chaos. He continued his teaching career following the war and still seems to be in contact with Rean. What's more, both his personal curiosity and other factors have led to him showing an interest in the Black Records. Okay, die spoilern das hier tatsächlich noch nicht. Also was heißt spoilern? Wir werden es ja am Ende des Videos sehen in dem Video, aber ich finde es, egal, sprechen wir später drüber. Kurz nach dem Video werde ich sicherlich noch 1-2 Worte dazu verlieren. Neidhart. A member of the Imperial Army's 4th Armored Division and the former military science instructor at Thors, known as Neidhart the Mighty, he's Lieutenant General Craig's right-hand man. Both he and Major Müller-Wender are highly regarded due to their skill. Despite splitting his time between the academy and his military work, he's a fine teacher. He'd often bicker with Sara, though he preferred her to dealing with Thomas. He helped marshal the Imperial Army's troops during the war, while also assisting Class 7. In the final battle, he even took to the field to offer his skills. After the war, he quit his position as instructor to return full-time to the 4th Armored Division, now considered the strongest part of the army. He keeps a close watch as Erebonia continues to bolster its military forces. Und Valimar als letzter. Cool, dass er auch einen eigenen Eintrag bekommt. A relic from before the Dark Ages, known as the Ashen Knight, discovered by Class 7 in Thors' old schoolhouse. Around 7 arch tall, it's intelligent and has its own will. Having deemed Rean its new awakener, it played a vital role in the war, especially against Panzer soldiers. It also accepted the rest of Class 7 as secondary contractors, letting them warp large distances and boosting their combat capabilities. Towards the end of the war, Rean piloted Valimar to fight the Azure Knight, Ordine, at the Infernal Castle, but both teamed up soon after to defeat the reawakened Vermilion Apocalypse. Following the war, Rean took Valimar with him to Crossbell, where their work together cemented Rean's fame as the Ashen Chevalier. Many mysteries still surround Valimar's past and true nature, but it seems that the Lionheart Emperor, Drykuls, was its previous awakener. So. Danke für diesen Input. Allies. Olivert Reise Arnor. The eldest son of Emperor Eugene III and a dandy known for his refined tastes. Despite being the eldest, his mother was a commoner, and as such, he has no right to the throne. He became a major figure in high society and the media, perhaps due to the greater freedom not being the crown prince afforded him. He was both chairman of Thors' board of directors and responsible for the creation of Class 7. Fearing the worsening of the factional conflict in Erebonia, he built the Courageous, a high-speed cruiser. Once the war had begun, he left said cruiser in Towa in Class 7's hands, then departed for western Erebonia to help with the fighting there. He has friends in both Liberl and Crossbell and, in disguise, played a key role in bringing the incident in Liberl 4 years ago to a close. For some reason, he is incredibly wary of Chancellor Osborne. Alfin Reise Arnor. The daughter of Emperor Eugene III and Crown Princess Cedric's twin sister. Her angelic face and charming personality have gained her fans far and wide. Though generally sweet and caring, she can also be quite a tease, a trait she no doubt picked up from her older brother, Prince Olivert. Her favorite target is her best friend, Elise. She also enjoys making passes at Rean simply to bask in everyone's reactions. Though she was captured by the Noble Alliance during the war, Rean was able to rescue her, and following this, she played a key role as a political backer for the Courageous. After the war, she started attending St. Estrella Girls' School along with Elise, though she had her own duties to attend to on top of her schoolwork. She also couldn't help but worry for Cedric's health. Elise Schwarzer. Rean's sister and the daughter of House Schwarzer. Elegant and polite, she is also a close friend of Princess Elphin, who attends St. Estrella Girls' School with her. Despite the fact they're not related by blood, she adores Rean to the point where Elphin feels the need to tease her for it. She can also be surprisingly bold when it comes to him, particularly when he expresses any sort of self-doubt. Though she was kidnapped by the Noble Alliance during the war, Class 7 was successful in rescuing her. Following the war, she graduated from St. Estrella's middle school to its high school and became student council president. While this made her busier than ever, she still couldn't help but stop and worry about Rean. Celine. Einzige Person ohne Nachnamen hier. Aber gut, ist ja auch eine Katze, ne? A black cat whom Emma brought with her to Thors. She has beautiful fur and, far more puzzlingly, the ability to use human language. In reality, she is both Emma's familiar and her supervisor. On numerous occasions, she tested Rean from behind the scenes to see whether he was fit to be a Divine Knight's Awakener. She gained Rean's ire by ordering Valimar to flee from the battlefield after Crow defeated him, leaving his friends behind despite his objections. But after they fought through many battles together, they ended up on good terms, eventually reuniting with Emma. Though initially not too savvy about how human emotions work, she became much more empathetic through her involvement with Class 7. Following the war, she accompanied Emma back to her home village. So. Sharon Kreuger. Sharon, genau. The former caretaker of Class 7's dormitory at Thors Military Academy and a servant of the Reinford family. Elisa thinks of her as something akin to an older sister, as a veritable supermaid who remains flawless in everything from welcoming guests to cooking. She's helped Class 7 on countless occasions, always appearing when they needed her most. Her true identity is Enforcer number 9 of Ouroboros, also known as the Severing Chains. During the war, she chose to fight against her fellow members, helping Class 7 out whenever possible. After the war, she returned to the Rainford household, both to serve Chairman Irina and watch over Elisa. Though Ouroboros enforcers are granted absolute freedom, how much longer can she distance herself from her past? Ich hoffe ja, dass sie in Teil 3 hier auch nochmal eine Rolle einnimmt, weil ich fand sie als Charakter immer unglaublich spannend. Claire Revels, falls man sie so ausspricht mit dem Nachnamen. A captain in the Railway Military Police, an elite organization in the Imperial Army. Her incredible problem-solving abilities, as well as charming looks, have led to her becoming known as the Icy Maiden. Much like Millium, she is also a member of the Ironbloods, a group that answers directly to Chancellor Osborne. Unable to protect Osborne from being shot, she used her grief as motivation to support Rean and his classmates during the war. However, at the war's end, not only does she find out that Osborne had been alive all along, his relationship with Rean was also brought to light. This led to a wall forming between her and Rean, though the two were eventually able to reconnect. Viscount Arseid. Laura's father and the head of a famous military family, Viscount Arseid is the ruling lord of the lakeside town of Legram and is loved by his people. He is also famous as the strongest swordsman in Erebonia and bears the title of Radiant Blade Master. He shared Prince Oliver's opposition to the factional conflict, and it was partly for that reason that he was chosen to be captain of the Courageous. He left the ship to Towa in Class 7 before departing for West Erebonia with Oliver during the war. However, he returned in time to help fend off MacBurn at the Infernal Castle. Following the war, he took time off from his duties as captain to help train Laura and pass down the Arseid School's ultimate technique to her. Und Toval Randonneur. Weiß nicht, ob dieser Name jemals geläufig war, also der Nachname. A bracer affiliated with Erebonia's Bracer Guild. The limitations put on the guild in Erebonia make it hard for bracers to do their job, but he keeps doing what he can with the help of others such as Sarah, Prince Olivert, and Viscount Arseid. While overall skilled in combat, his true strength lies in his customized battle orbments, which let him cast powerful arts in quick succession. He helped Rean when he was separated from his classmates during the war, providing the sort of skills and experience only a seasoned bracer could. After the war, he tried to invite Rean to the guild, knowing full well the government's plans for him. Rean, however, politely declined, understanding his responsibility as an awakener. Sarah soon returned to the guild, and together the two of them prepared for the crisis ahead. Okay, danke auch für diesen Überblick. Machen wir weiter mit den Keyfigures. Gilliath Osborne, ja, also wenn der keine Keyfigure ist, dann weiß ich auch nicht. Head of the Imperial Government and known as the Blood and Iron Chancellor. Since he became Chancellor, he has pushed for the modernization of Erebonia, expanding the railway network and annexing nearby territories. His approach earned him great popularity among commoners in Erebonia. However, it also incited the ire of the nobles, making him, in a sense, the cause of the country's political turmoil. Shot clean through the heart during a speech, his death heralded the civil war as the Noble Alliance forces moved to take Heimdall immediately afterwards. At the end of the war, it was revealed that not only did he survive, but that Jusis Albarea, a key pillar of the Noble Alliance, was working for him. Further, he announced his intent to usurp Ouroboros' Phantasmal Blaze plan and left Rean stunned with the revelation that he was his birth father. Genau, war einfach die Faser. Die Faser, der Vater vom Faser, von der Faser. Jusis Albarea. The eldest son of Duke Albarea, head of one of the four great houses and a key figure in the noble faction. He was Jusis' instructor in court fencing, and his younger brother trusted him implicitly. He served as chief of staff for the Noble Alliance during the war and successfully fought off the Imperial army with his brilliant strategies. Towards the end of the war, though, he revealed himself to be the primary member of Osborne's Iron Bloods, bringing the war to an end after dismantling the Noble Alliance from within. Under orders from Osborne, he then oversaw the annexation of Crossbell and became its first Governor-General. Lecter Arundel. A captain of the Imperial Army's Intelligence Division and the second secretary for the Imperial Government. He is a member of the Iron Bloods, Chancellor Osborne's hand-picked assistants, yet he's aided Rean and his classmates on several occasions. His carefree nature and often shocking behavior make it difficult for others to predict his next move or his overarching goals. His incredible success while undertaking unofficial negotiations on behalf of the government and military has earned him the nickname Scarecrow. During the war, he assisted the Imperial Army alongside Clan Millium. He then made a well-timed visit to the Infernal Castle following Osborne's reappearance. After the war, he took up the role of delivering the government's orders to Rean, acting as both his support and supervisor. Prince Cedric. Crown Prince Cedric, hier nochmal ein bisschen detaillierter. The second son of Emperor Eugene III and Princess Elphin's younger twin brother. Though not the oldest of the Emperor's children, he was named Crown Prince due to Oliver's commoner blood. Kind and honest, he and his two siblings were always on great terms, though Elphin sometimes found herself frustrated with his shyness. He had a deep respect for Olivert. He was kidnapped by Duke Cayenne during the war and eventually forced to become the core for the Vermilion Apocalypse. Though he was rescued through Class 7's efforts and the sacrifice of one of their friends, his health took a turn for the worse following the war, and thus he had to delay his enrollment into Thors military academy. Karl Regnitz. Machias father and the Imperial Governor of Heimdall, the first commoner ever to hold the position. He is a close ally to Chancellor Osborne. Though a member of the reformist faction, he is known for his desire to work together with the nobility. He was captured by the Noble Alliance during the war, but took initiative during Heimdall's crisis to help bring order to the city. Following the war, he assisted with the newly annexed Crossbear province's economic strategies and with rebuilding the region's political environment. Irina Reinford. Wie sie guckt. Elisas mother and the chairman of the Reinford group. Her husband, a gifted engineer, passed away many years ago. She herself is as sharp and ruthless as they come, forcing her own father out of power to gain her current position, then moving to expand the group to levels previously unseen. This, together with her involvement in developing the railway guns, created a rift between her and Elisa. The distance between them closed somewhat when Elisa and the rest of Class 7 rescued her during the war, however. Following the war, she shifted priority to reorganizing the RF group to a new stage with Sharon's help, while also keeping a watchful eye on Elisa's growth. Olaf Craig. Nennen wir ihn Olaf, Lieutenant General Craig. Elliot's father and commander of the Imperial Army's 4th Armored Division. Known as Craig the Red, the division he leads boasts the greatest firepower in the Imperial Army. Though his grizzled and imposing appearance may lead people to believe otherwise, he is an impossibly doting father to Elliot's constant embarrassment. He cooperated with Class 7 during the war, then played a vital part in retaking Heimdall from the Noble Alliance forces. Pleased with Elliot's growth during his time with Class 7, he finally allowed him to pursue his dream to be a musician and transfer to a music academy. His family life settled, he began to prepare for the looming threat of Calvert. Okay. Dann haben wir Suspicious Figures. Ja, da fällt mir auch direkt der ein oder andere Name ein. Vita Clotilde. A woman known to many as Misty, the personality behind Radio Trista's popular show Abendtime. Stimmt, so hieß das Ding, schon wieder voll vergessen. Her soothing voice and playful demeanor gained her fans from all over the empire. Unbeknownst to many, she was also the Azure Diva, a famous performer at the Heimdall Opera House. After running into both of her personas, Rean was able to make the connection between the two. Oh, ich dachte gerade, der Text hat gerade so ein bisschen gebraucht. Das sieht so hübsch aus, was sie hier anhat. Habe ich bestimmt schon mal irgendwo erwähnt, aber musste nochmal gesagt werden. In reality, though, both of these were a front for her true self. The Azure Abyss, second Anguis of Ouroboros, and the one in charge of the Phantasmal Blaze plan. At the end of the war, she summoned the Infernal Castle, then had Rean and Crow fight one another in their Divine Nights, though her reasons for this were unclear. Her plan was stolen soon after by the reappearance of Osborne, forcing her to go into hiding. Die werden wir safe in Teil 3 auch nochmal sehen. Wahrscheinlich alle, die hier stehen, aber mal gucken. McBurn, Enforcer number 1 of Ouroboros. Known as the Almighty Conflagration, he can conjure and control fire at will. Said fire can burn anything and everything to ash, making him the undisputed strongest of the Enforcers. However, he spends most of his time doing whatever he pleases, abandoning missions entirely if he loses interest. On the other hand, his motivation is set ablaze by powerful foes, changing him into the blazing demon, an entity wreathed in pitch-black flames. At the end of the war, he stood in Class 7's way in the Infernal Castle. Summoning his demon sword, Angbar, he readied to annihilate them before Viscount Arseid arrived to challenge him. The two then proceeded to have a battle well beyond the limits of human comprehension. So. Duvali, the Swift. The head knight of the Stahlritter, a group led by Ouroboros' 7th Anguis. Known as Duvali the Swift, her strength rivals that of most enforcers. Though a member of Ouroboros, her extreme devotion to the Steel Maiden and earnest personality make it hard to dislike her for friend and foe alike. It was a mystery why she thought of Laura as her rival, but all became clear at the Infernal Castle, where she revealed that her master was indeed the same legendary figure from 250 years ago that Laura's family once served. Hatte ich gar nicht mehr auf dem Schirm, diese Connection. Leonidas Xeno. Regimental commanders of Zephyr, one of the strongest Jäger corps on the continent, known as Trapmaster Zeno and Leonidas the Behemoth, they helped raise Fie and were like family to her. Following the death of their boss, though, they both abruptly vanished from her life. But in a surprise turn of events, both were hired by Duke Cayenne to help the Noble Alliance take over Heimdall. They also clashed with Class 7 a handful of times over the course of the war. Following their battle at Infernal Castle, they informed Fie of their plan to bring back their boss before disappearing once more. Altina, the Black Rabbit. A mysterious girl who was seen working alongside the Noble Alliance during the war. She kidnapped Princess Elfin and Elise and also proved a powerful foe for Class 7 thanks to... Oh Gott. Ich glaube, da hatte ich schon in Teil 2 meine Probleme mit. Wie spricht man das denn nochmal aus? Clariom Soles oder so? A black combat shell similar to Millium's Argentlem. Much like Millium, she came from the Black Workshop who landed her to the Noble Alliance. That was simply a front to fool Duke Cayenne, however. The Black Workshop was under Osborne's control, and Altina was just another tool to help Rufus bring down the Noble Alliance. With Duke Cayenne arrested by her hand, the war came to an end. Following that, she joined the intelligence division and accompanied Rean on his missions outside of the country, both as his support and to keep tabs on him. So. Crow Armburst, hätte ich fast gesagt. A former second-year student at Thors and a close friend of Towa, Angelica, and George. In danger of being forced to repeat a year due to missing too many lessons, he was transferred into Class 7 and told that if he participated in their curriculum, he would be allowed to graduate. The rest of the class quickly warmed up to him, and they went through field studies and even performed on stage together. Entschuldigung. But his true identity was C, the leader of the Imperial Liberation Front. His assassination of Chancellor Osborne was the shot that heralded the Civil War. Guided by Vida, he was the Awakener of Ordine, the Azure Knight, and stood as one of Class 7's opponents during the war. Despite everything that happened, he reconciled with his friends following their final battle at the Infernal Castle. But not long after, he suffered a fatal wound while fighting alongside them to defeat the newly revived Vermilion Apocalypse, bringing his short life to a tragic end. So, damit hätten wir diese Liste auch einmal durch. Others. Duke Cayenne. Head of the Cayenne Dukedom, which governs the Lamar province and is the de facto leader of the 4 great houses. Not only did he possess a fortune greater than some smaller countries, he had an equally powerful army. He took control of the Rainford Group factories aligned with a noble faction, using them to create a massive flagship and panzer soldiers. He also funded the Imperial Liberation Front in order to get rid of Chancellor Osborne and begin the Civil War. His goal was to carry on the will of his ancestor from 250 years ago, which led him to summon the Infernal Castle with Vita's help. Things didn't quite go as expected, though, after Rean and Crow made amends. In desperation, he revived the Vermilion Apocalypse at Crown Prince Cedric's expense, only to be betrayed and arrested afterwards. His political power is such that even after such blatant treason, a verdict on his trial still has yet to be reached. Aurelia Le Guin oder so. General Aurelia, ja, das ist einfacher. Former commander of both Lamar's provincial army and the Noble Alliance forces. She is the head of House Le Guin and a swordsman renowned for having mastered both the Arseid and Vander schools. Her incredible strength and golden aura have led to her being feared as the Golden Rakshasa. Together with Brigadier General Velas Badias, she drove off the Imperial Army and expanded the Noble Alliance's territory during the war. Eventually, she tried to bring things to a close with one final battle near Heimdall, but this was interrupted by the Infernal Castle. She agreed to the ceasefire after Duke Cayenne's arrest and retreated to her stronghold in West Erebonia to watch how things would play out. An die hätte ich gar nicht mehr gedacht. Ich weiß, dass wir die wie heißt der Ort von Laura, diese Stadt da, Legram, dass wir sie da mal angetroffen haben, aber zusammen mit den Badias, die hängen ja irgendwie miteinander zusammen. Aber die hätte ich jetzt auch vergessen, wenn sie hier nicht nochmal auf der Liste gewesen wären. The head of House Badias and leader of the Sutherland Provincial Army. He is a descendant of the people of Nord who accompanied Emperor Drycuts during the War of the Lions, and his terrifying skills with the lance have led to him being referred to as the Black Whirlwind. Aurelia's right-hand man, he served as second in command of the Noble Alliance forces during the war. Alongside Aurelia, he agreed to a ceasefire with the 4th Armored Division when the Infernal Castle spawned in Heimdall. Following the end of the war, the government was intent on stripping the provincial armies of their power, and he was a key figure in negotiating against it. So, dann haben wir Professor G. Schmidt. One of the 3 disciples of Professor Epstein, das ist so vor dem Hintergrund der Epstein-Files und des real existierenden Epstein, ist das, ja, als ich die letzten Trace-Spiele gezockt habe, wo er hier eine Rolle gespielt hat, da war das medial noch gar nicht so ein Riesenthema gewesen, aber jetzt muss ich da spontan dran denken. One of the 3 disciples of Professor Epstein, father of the Orbital Revolution, Schmidt is a genius and known as Erebonia's greatest engineer. He's head of the Ruhr Institute of Technology, and together with Gwyn, former chairman of the Rainford Company, they revolutionized Erebonia's technology. Impossibly stubborn, he takes interest only in his research, to the point where even his disciples have labeled him a lost cause. Though he had no allegiance to the nobles or the reformists, he assisted in the production of all sorts of deadly weapons, including the railway guns and panzer soldats. George, one of his disciples, scolded him for this, convincing him to help with creating a new blade for Valimar, so Rean could put an end to the fighting. Und Lloyd Bennings, da ist er. A detective working for Crossbell's police department and the leader of the special support section. He headed up a group of unique individuals, some with no affiliation with the police, and together they stood against and eventually foiled a huge conspiracy that threatened to swallow the entire state. However, before they did, Erebonia's guerrilla fortress was annihilated, and the Empire used this as an excuse to invade and annex Crossbell. Lloyd and his comrades would continue to struggle for Crossbell's sake, however. On the day the annexation was announced, he and Rishia went underground to collect and prevent key information from falling into Erebonia's hands. In doing so, though, he came face to face with Rean, who had been sent to Crossbell under a special order from the government to retrieve said information. Tja, hätten die sich unter anderen Umständen kennengelernt, ich bleibe dabei. Die wären echt gute Freunde und haben in ihrem Wertesystem eigentlich sehr, sehr viele Überschneidungen. So, dann wären wir damit auch durch und haben noch die World Introduction. Da wird es auch nochmal spannend und sehr politisch und mit sehr viel Fachbegriffen angereichert. The World of Trails. Ach, da gibt es auch noch Unterkategorien. Na, Prost Mahlzeit. Das wird mit Abstand das längste Video, was ich, glaube ich, jemals aufgenommen habe. Ich hoffe, ich werde hier nicht heiser. Omens. Omens are machinery that draw out power from septium to produce a multitude of different effects. These effects vary depending on the arrangement of circuitry created from processed septium and gears within an augment. Not only are augments useful for their manifold applications, but since septium replenishes its own orbal energy over time, they are far more efficient than any other form of energy. Of all the types of augments in use today, one particular variant is known as the battle augment. These devices synchronize with their users, boosting their physical capabilities while also granting them the ability to cast orbal arts. Battle augments are now in their 5th generation. The type currently being developed by Erebonia for military use is referred to as the Arcus unit. The Orbal Revolution. The Orbal Revolution was brought about 50 years ago by Professor C. Epstein's invention of augments. The public was initially skeptical of this new technology, but the spread of orbal railways, airships, and telephones by his students after his passing quickly proved its value. Only 50 years later, augments have become a necessity. Everyday items such as heating and lighting, mass transportation, such as trains and airships, and even weapons like tanks and cannons are orbal powered now. What's more, advancements in technology have decreased the size of orbal engines, leading to the development of automobiles, weiß nicht, wie man es richtig ausspricht, pilotable humanoid weapons, and an orbal network made of countless orbal terminals. So, the Zemurian civilization. An ancient civilization that existed 1,200 years ago, prior to the beginning of the Septian calendar. They possessed a level of technology far surpassing that of the modern era, but a mysterious disaster known only as the Great Collapse wiped them out, leading humanity into the Dark Ages. The Septian Church. The Septian Church, which, ich finde es übrigens richtig nice, dass die Hintergrundbilder sich auch immer wieder verändern. Das sind so Details, die finde ich schön. The Septian Church, which is centered around the worship of the goddess of the sky, Aidios, is the most widespread religion in Zemuria. The church was formed to guide the lost and hopeless after the Great Collapse. Its high seat is in the holy city of Ateria. Although its influence has decreased since the Orbal Revolution, it still has a significant presence in the continent's education and health systems. The church is composed of a number of divisions, 2 of which are the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Congregation for the Sacraments. The former handles all liturgical matters, while the latter is in charge of retrieving and managing artifacts, relics of the Zemurian civilization. Rumor has it the latter also employs a special unit of highly skilled knights in secret, but for what purpose? The Bracer Guild. A private group that works to ensure the peace and safety of the citizens of Zemuria. Its members are known as Bracers, and its main HQ is located in Le Mans, though it has branches all over the continent. Though its mission statement of giving priority to the safety of civilians is laudable, unless a civilian's life or freedom is directly threatened, the Guild's code prevents Bracers from interfering with anyone of national, military, or political standing. What's more, a string of bombings took place at the Erebonian branches a few years ago, severely impacting the Guild's ability to operate there. However, rumors say that both the government and prominent noble houses found their existence a nuisance, and that their interference was the true force behind the Guild's troubles in Erebonia. Yiga Corps. a term used for skilled mercenary groups who can be found all over the continent. The flexibility in their contracts and their undeniable combat skill make them a popular choice as private armies in some countries. There are other countries, however, that staunchly oppose their use. Two names that are well known in West Zemuria are the Red Constellation, who had their origins in the Berserkers of the Middle Ages, and Zephyr, home to all sorts of combat specialists. Other notable names include the Northern Jägers, based out of North Ambria, and Nidhogg, who bear the symbol of a dragon. Die ersten beiden waren mir geläufiger. Ouroboros, a secret society that operates throughout the continent. Almost everything about them remains a mystery. Ruled by their enigmatic grandmaster, their plans are devised by the Seven Anguis and carried out by special agents known as enforcers. Their engineering network, known as the 13 Factories, keep them one step ahead of modern technology, giving them access to autonomous weapons known as archaisms and a massive flagship known as the Glorious. Not only were they responsible for the crisis in Le Beurre a few years ago, resulting in their acquisition of the Aureole, one of the Septarian, they also assisted with bringing the Azure Tree and Infernal Castle into the world. They aren't infallible though, as their Phantasma Blaze plan was stolen out from under them by Gilead Osborne. Having made an enemy out of the greatest military force on the continent, how will they proceed from here? Ich mag die irgendwie, weil ich die immer mit Trails in the Sky assoziiere und das dort eben introduced wurde und anfing mit dieser Trilogie. Countries of Zemuria. Empire of Erebonia. Located in the westernmost part of Zemuria, this gigantic empire bears a golden stallion on its crest. Its current emperor is Eugen Reiser Arnor III. Though Erebonia is a nation of history and tradition with a strict class system, the country is currently undergoing a modernization under Chancellor Gilead Osborne. Between its national armed forces, the Imperial Army, and private provincial armies at the command of the nobles ruling each province, Erebonia is one of the most powerful nations in Zemuria alongside Calvert. In October of the year 1204, Chancellor Osborne was shot, signaling the start of the Civil War, as Heimdall was taken by the noble faction. 2 months later, on December 31st, a ceasefire was reached, ending the war. Soon after, Erebonia invaded Crossbear State for destroying Garrelia Fortress, seizing it in a mere day. After fighting off forces sent from Calvert, it was formally announced in March of 1205 that Crossbear would be annexed into Erebonia. Republic of Calvert. A sprawling republic located east of Crossbell, in which a democracy was established about 100 years ago. Its current leader is President Rocksmith. Ach stimmt, den gibt's ja auch noch. Der tauchte hier bisher in dem ganzen Backstory-Gedöns, glaube ich, noch gar nicht namentlich auf. Auch nicht in der Liste der Personen. The country covers a large area and, due to its policy of freely accepting immigrants from the east, has a diverse cultural background as well. Its long-standing rivalry with Erebonia has led to a number of clashes between them, particularly over ownership of Crossbell. After Erebonia's occupation of Crossbell in 1205, Calvert rallied its forces in response, but were eventually fought back by the Empire's Panzer soldiers. Erebonia soon declared that it would be annexing Crossbell, making it the largest nation in Zemuria and leaving Calvert in a precarious situation. Kingdom of Le Beurre. A kingdom in the southwestern part of Zemuria. Though a monarchy, it has no class system, and its ruler, Queen Alicia II, is a staunch advocate for peace. It's also the home of Professor Russell, one of Professor Epstein's disciples. Historically one of the most advanced countries on the continent, it was the first to deploy orbital airships. 10 years ago, Erebonia invaded in what's now known as the 100 Days War. Though outnumbered, Libert's clever use of airships pushed back the Empire's army. Seemingly a magnet for trouble, the country was also caught up in one of Ouroboros' plans. This resulted in the reactivation of the Liber Arc, causing all orbit technology for miles to cease functioning. The incident was eventually settled by the efforts of Libert's royal army, the Bracer Guild, and a certain individual from Erebonia. Fully aware of the rising tensions in Zemuria due to the Crossbell conflict, Libert can do little more than strive to maintain the peace it desires. Principality of Remiferia. A principality located in the northwestern part of Zemuria. Its current head of state is Prince Albert von Bartholomeus. Much like Liberl, it has done away with its class system. Though it boasts like national or military power, it's home to a number of medical manufacturers, making it Zemuria's authority on medical treatment. It's on good terms with both Erebonia and Calvert and has the same desire for peace as Liberl. It even provided support to North Ambria after the disaster there. Crossbell State. An autonomous state located in the center of western Zemuria. Crossbell sits between the Erebonian Empire and the Calvert Republic. While established as an autonomous state 70 years ago, its two neighbors still dispute its ownership. Crossbell City itself has since become one of the continent's key centers of commerce. Its international bank has funded a number of projects ranging from tourism efforts, such as theme parks, to new infrastructure like the Orbal network. In spite of this, it holds little power due to both Erebonia and Calvert's stakes in its taxes, creating all sorts of problems within the state. This led to Crossbell declaring independence, using supernatural aid to fight back the two countries that had pressured it for so long. As a result, Erebonia's guerrilla fortress was wiped out, leading to the Erebonian Civil War. After the war, Crossbell was taken over with little issue and Rufus Albarea was named its first Governor General. North Ambria State. An autonomous state with an extremely cold climate located in the northwestern reaches of Zemuria. Once a principality, it was hit by a disaster 20 years ago that enveloped half of the country in sword. This led to a coup wherein a democracy was established and the nation reformed into an autonomous state. Extreme poverty persisted through the country, however, leading the former military to form a Jäger Corps known as the Northern Jägers. They then took part in private wars all over the country to provide funding for the state. The Northern Jägers were hired by Duke Albarea during Erebonia's civil war and, under his orders, were responsible for setting fire to Seldik. Dankeschön. Weiter geht es mit Erebonias 5 Major Cities. Oh ja, an einige erinnere ich mich noch gut. St. Arc und Ordes sind wir da jemals gewesen? Ich weiß es nicht mehr. In Heimdall auf jeden Fall schon und das sehr lange und sehr ausgiebig. A city boasting close to 1,000 years of history. It's the capital of Erebonia and one of the oldest cities on the continent. With over 800,000 citizens, it's also the most densely populated city in West Zemuria. It earned its nickname of the Vermilion capital due to the red brick buildings that line its streets. A major station on the country's flourishing railroad line, the city itself also operates Orbal trams, though personal automobiles are also becoming more prevalent. To the north of the city lies Valflame Palace, home to both the imperial family and the imperial government. Its sheer scale is representative of the enormity of the empire. During the war, the city was occupied by the Noble Alliance, and right before the end, Valflame Palace was transformed into a terrifying edifice. Mysteriously enough, the latter event seems to have vanished from the populace's memories. Populace's Berea heart. Ich habe ja auch sehr viel Zeit verbracht. The Capital, es wird, je länger ich lese, Leute, das ist jetzt schon die 4. Stunde oder so, in der ich lese. Ich bin langsam ein bisschen platt. The capital of the Kreuzen province, ruled by the Albarea family. Known as the Verdant city, it is home to all manner of tradesmen, from jewelers to tailors. Duke Albarea's actions during the war led to its occupation by the Imperial Army, and following his arrest, Jusis Albarea was selected as its acting ruler. Achso, ich dachte, da kommt noch mehr. Rule. The capital of the Norcia province, ruled by the Rogner family, with a modern cityscape befitting the home of the Reinford Group's main office, is well suited to its title of the industrial metropolis. It's also home to the Ruhr Institute of Technology, from which many prevalent scientists and engineers have graduated. Marquis Rogner and his daughter, Angelica, squared off here during the war, leading to the Rogner family's withdrawal from the Noble Alliance. Saint Arc. The capital of the Sutherland province, ruled by the High Arms family. Bin ich da jemals gewesen? Ich versuche an dem Bild da im Hintergrund irgendwie was zu erkennen. Bestimmt waren wir da schon mal. Also, wenn man die Spiele bis hierhin chronologisch spielt. Its history is almost as rich as Heimdall's, and due to a previous emperor relocating the center of Erebonia there for a time, it is also known as the Old Capital. It is one of the few major cities in Erebonia to be blessed with little to no conflict during the war, thanks to Marquis High Arms' command. So, Ordis. The capital of the Lamar province, ruled by the Cayenne family. Located by the seaside, it is the center of West Zemuria's maritime commerce. The fortunes gathered here became a crucial source of Duke Cayenne's power. Its ties to Duke Cayenne and the nearby naval fortress made it the ideal stronghold for the Noble Alliance during the Civil War. Okay. Erebonian Organizations. Wollte gerade sagen, da gibt es auch einige sicherlich. Thors Military Academy. An academy founded by the Emperor Drykels the Lionheart himself. Located in Trista, it has become renowned for putting out a number of excellent prospects from both the nobility and commoners. Members of the imperial family are also known to attend. With a strict adherence to tradition, its classes are split between social ranks, promoting an environment of competition for the sake of self-improvement. However, one member of the imperial family proposed an idea for a new class. Class 7, a group composed of students from all kinds of classes and backgrounds. This class would go on to solve a number of issues across Erebonia, ultimately helping to end the Civil War. Unfortunately, their time together following the war's end would be short. Rainford Company. One of the largest manufacturers in Zemuria, Rainford began by producing gunpowder-based weapons, but has since expanded to include railways, airships, and all manner of weapons, dominating the marketplace. Its current chairman is Irina Rainford, who forced her father out of power before proceeding to greatly expand the company. This led to its individual factories becoming independent of one another. As a result, the Noble Alliance was able to have their flagship and panzer soldiers developed for use in the Civil War. Following the end of the war, it agreed to the government's request for a restructuring, allowing the company to grow even larger in order to meet demands for further weapon development. The Imperial Army. The Imperial Army directly serves Erebonia's government. Composed of over 20 tank-based armored divisions and hundreds of thousands of soldiers, it is the largest and most powerful military force in Zemuria. The increase in high-ranking officials from commoner backgrounds caused strife between it and the nobility's provincial armies, which came to a head in the Civil War. The war ended with the Imperial Army's victory, further strengthening it with new equipment and weapons in the aftermath. The provincial armies. The provincial armies are the personal military forces of the four great houses. Though not as unified as the imperial army, they're just as formidable. Their elite are selected to join the Imperial Guard, tasked with defending the palace. Their size varies by region, but even the smallest provincial armies rival most smaller countries' entire militaries. United under the Noble Alliance's banner during the Civil War, they employed panzer soldiers to fight off the Imperial Army. Railway Military Police, also known as RMP. A recent branch of the military formed by Chancellor Osborne, home to a plethora, was das denn, of gifted troops backed by the latest in equipment. Their reach stretches as far as the country's railroads do. They are regularly a thorn in the provincial army's sides, as they have priority when it comes to incidents on land where the railroads operate. They provided backup to the Imperial Army during the Civil War while also retaliating against the Noble Alliance forces' railroad usage. The Intelligence Division. Another organization formed by Chancellor Osborne. Very little is publicly known about its operating procedures or agents who work largely in secret. Its purview stretches far and wide, both within and outside the country. This includes the four great houses, Calvert, other countries, and even the Bracer Guild and Jäger Corps. Its agents are skilled in information warfare, making them a valuable asset in negotiations. There seem to be some girls with special weapons among their number. Okay. Return. Dankeschön. Erebonian History. The War of the Lions und Witches and Gnomes. Wir fangen mal oben an. A war that swept up the entirety of Erebonia 250 years ago. It began when the rightful heir to the throne was assassinated. Four potential successors then went to war, each backed by powerful nobility, resulting in years of bloodshed. Drykulz, the son of the late emperor and born of a commoner mother, soon took up arms in Nord and went on to bring the conflict to an end, saving countless people along the way. With the war over, he succeeded the throne and helped re-establish the country's former glory. This led to him being called the Lionheart Emperor and father of the Renaissance. Of those who sided themselves with Drykulz, none were more renowned than the lance maiden Liane Sandlot. She led an elite group of warriors known as the Eisenritter and, after her death, was canonized as a saint of the Septian Church. Witches and Gnomes. Two groups who have made their impact on Erebonian history from behind the scenes. The Hexen clan are a coven of witches treated as both benevolent and evil in folklore. They played a part in the War of the Lions and also seem to know the truth behind the Divine Knights and the Infernal Castle. Witches possess vast amounts of mana, have personal familiars, and are led by someone with the title of Elder. As for the gnomes, their whereabouts and role remain a complete mystery. All that's known is that they had built the spirit shrines scattered throughout Erebonia and that they had constructed the Divine Knights from a special ore. Haben wir von diesen Gnomes jemals gehört in den bisherigen Spielen? Ich kenne nur diese Drogenbezeichnung hier in Zero und Azure, aber in dem Kontext, wie das hier genannt wird, kommt mir das gar nicht bekannt vor. Okay, Leute, damit sind wir mit den Punkten soweit durch. Also mit den Punkten, die uns hier die Backstory anbietet. Aber es gibt ja noch das Video, was wir uns jetzt einmal zusammen angucken werden. Beziehungsweise habe ich das jetzt nicht nochmal als NG Plus neu aufgezogen, aber wir gucken uns das trotzdem einmal zusammen an. Irgendwann werde ich das auch noch platinieren und bevor ich irgendwas dazu sage, holt euch nochmal ein Käffchen oder irgendein Kaltgetränk oder sowas und wir gucken da mal rein. Dauert 8 bis 9 Minuten.
my! Who would have imagined even more marvelous mysteries still lurked within the old schoolhouse? What a delight! Why, I can hardly stop myself from heading in there to take a little peek.
That might not be the best idea right now. There's no telling what could happen in there.
Oh, come now, I was only kidding. I wouldn't dream of rushing in to steal the thrill of discovery for myself. But, all joking aside, I take it you finished reading those deciphered passages from the black records I gave you, Rean.
Huh?
Deciphered?
Well, sure, I looked through them, but why do you ask? And what's Rosine doing here anyway?
Well...
Questions, so many questions. Please, allow me to elucidate.
What's going on? This is just like when I called out to Valimar that first time.
To put it simply, I've created a partition of sorts. The three of us standing here within are the only ones who can even sense it. Meanwhile, those outside remain blissfully unaware of its existence. I'll admit, for a moment there, I was worried that Emma and Celine might have noticed something amiss, but it seems I've still got the touch.
Just who the hell are you? And you too, Rosine. Why are you wearing your habit all of a sudden?
Starting off with the basics, I see. Perfectly fine by me. Who the hell am I indeed? My formal ties are to the Septian Church, as a member of the Gralsritter. Second among the Dominion, in fact. I stand at the right hand of our leader, and am known by some as the Partitioner. But you already know my real name, of course. I've never hidden that from you. I am and shall always be Thomas Lysander.
I'm a squire, tasked with supporting him in the execution of his duties. You could say I'm an apprentice knight of the Gralsritter.
What? Hold on. What? The Gralsritter? Do they have something to do with the Congregation for the Sacraments Scarlet was talking about?
That they do, Rean. We're a secret sect of the Congregation, an unseen face. Our organization's existence isn't known to the wider world, nor should it be.
Our primary purpose is to gather and seal away dangerous artifacts. But every once in a blue moon, it becomes necessary to undertake covert operations like this one.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. To be honest, I felt like there was something off about you for a while now. You were able to decipher the Black Records, for one. And your knowledge and abilities go way beyond the average instructors. But even still, I never would have guessed you were connected to something this large-scale. And with all that in mind, what do you want with me? Why tell me all of this now? Have you finally decided to step out from the shadows and interfere?
That's not quite it.
Perish the thought, Rean. What happens in the old schoolhouse is out of our jurisdiction. Always has been. The way things stand brings to mind a few parallels with Liberl's Phantasma trouble, but I doubt this is nearly as dangerous. After we're done here, I'll be glad to let you tackle that on your own. Me, I'm only here for a little talk with you. After all, you are an Awakener, possessor of a fragment of the Great Power. And that means we have matters to discuss. This should come as no surprise, but the trouble facing this land is far from over. Oh, it may seem to have passed for now. But this peace is merely a simple respite. The most crucial moment stands silent in the wings, waiting to unfurl before us. The Chancellor never stopped spinning his webs, and while he may have repelled Ouroboros for now, they will be back. Mark my words. And there's not a doubt in my mind that you'll have an important role to play in what's to come. That's why I thought it would be worthwhile to make a formal introduction and ask for your cooperation. So, what say you?
Sir, if I may, you might want to ease him into this a little more gently. It's quite a lot to take in at once. Rean, I want you to know we're not here to scare you or to make an enemy of you. We don't mean to pressure you into a response either. For now, our intent is just to remain here and keep an eye on things. So if there's ever anything you need our help with, we're here for you. Just ask and we'll do whatever we can.
Thanks, Rosine. You're right, too. This is a lot to take in at once. I'm not really sure how to respond. I guess at the very least, I can tell you're not my enemies. But by the same token, that doesn't necessarily make you my allies either. So, no promises.
I understand completely, Rean. And for the time being, that's perfectly fine. But to return to an earlier topic, those black records you found are actually of particular interest as historical artifacts. As far as I can tell, their purpose was to record the true history of the Divine Knights. Given that recovering artifacts like those is our job, well, if you happen to find any more, do pass them along to us, would you? I'll give you transcripts of everything I can decipher, of course. Given what you've read so far, I'm sure you must be curious.
I'll give it some thought.
Huh? Huh? Huh?
What? Huh? What in the...
Well, do take care, everyone. I'll be praying for you.
Of course you will.
Are you really sure that was for the best? I'm afraid you might have made him even more wary of us.
Oh, that was exactly my intent. I need him to start acting with a little greater awareness of his place in a world that's more precarious than he takes it for. That is, if we intend to unravel the mysteries of the two septarians that once graced this hallowed land. And beyond that, the secrets of the system fashioned by the witches and gnomes. The 7 Divine Knights. Osborne being dead set on locking down our activity certainly doesn't help matters either. The Roaring Lion should be able to take care of Western Erebonia on his own. But there's certainly no harm in working to strengthen our foothold on this side of the Empire as well. Our work will not be easy, Rosine. Be mindful of that.
Yes, sir. Well, if you'll excuse me, the children are waiting.
So, und diese Szene bekommt man nur zu sehen, wenn man, wie gesagt, ein NG Plus startet. Du hast keine Chance, an diese Szene ranzukommen, wenn du einfach nur Teil 2 durchspielst und möglichst als Completionist da irgendwie durchgehst. Selbst wenn du alles auf 100% hast, du musst das am Ende eines NG Pluses dir angucken und bekommst das auch nur angezeigt, wenn du vorher auch alle Black Records eingesammelt hast. Also, was haben wir gelernt? Ich weiß nicht, ob da jetzt zwischen den Zeilen noch weitere wichtige Informationen mit dabei waren, aber ich habe jetzt für mich einmal notiert, dass Thomas, den wir ja ganz, ganz lange als ganz normalen, stinknormalen Lehrer in Trista gesehen und kennengelernt haben, der ist kein stinknormaler Lehrer, definitiv nicht. Er hat sich hier in der Szene gerade als Mitglied der Gralsritter geoutet, also er ist ein sogenannter Dominion. Nummer 2 habe ich mir auch notiert, The Petitioner. Ne, die haben ja immer alle nochmal so eigene Namen. Das heißt, wir kennen jetzt einen weiteren Dominion. Rosine ist auch nicht die Unschuld vom Lande, wie wir sie in Teil 2 kennengelernt haben. Ich weiß gar nicht, ob sie in Teil 1 schon eine Rolle gespielt hat. Wahrscheinlich hat man sie da auch schon getroffen. Aber sie ist eine sogenannte Squire, also ein Lehrling oder eine Untergebene innerhalb dieses Ordens und quasi die rechte Hand vom Thomas. Und ja, ich gehe mal ganz stark davon aus, weil ich wurde ja, nachdem ich das Let's Play zu Teil 2, also zu Code Steel 2 beendet habe, ja darauf hingewiesen, dass diese Szene, die wir gerade gesehen haben, elementar ist für das Verständnis in Teil 3. Das heißt, das, was hier gerade an Reveal durch Thomas und Rosine gedroppt wurde, das wird dort scheinbar irgendwie fortgesetzt. Das heißt, entweder werden die Menschen um die Identität der beiden wissen oder es gibt irgendwie eine Eskalation um die Gralsritter herum oder man bekommt die direkt ins Team und die fangen an, so miteinander zu quatschen, als würde man jetzt die Wahrheit schon voraussetzen. Also irgendwas in die Richtung wird auf jeden Fall kommen und wir sind darauf vorbereitet. Also zumindest all diejenigen, die sich diese Szene jetzt angeguckt haben. Und ich möchte mich noch an dieser Stelle nochmal ganz, ganz dolle dafür bedanken, dass ich den Hinweis auch bekommen habe bezüglich des Videos. Janni hatte mir damals noch einen Link geschickt, also Dank geht auch explizit an dich nochmal dafür raus, weil ich im Leben nicht auf die Idee gekommen wäre, dass es so eine inhaltliche Brücke noch gibt zwischen 2 und 3. Ich finde es aber auch wirklich unmöglich aus Entwicklersicht, das so derart zu verstecken. Ich verstehe das nicht. Also irgendwie, vielleicht wollten die Entwickler, dass man irgendwie maximal irritiert in Teil 3 einsteigt, ohne dieses Wissen zu haben. Aber dafür habe ich wenig Verständnis, sage ich euch, wie es ist. Es ist aber umso besser, dass ich die Trades spiele seit jeher in Form von Blind-Let's Plays, also außer mit Code Steel 1, das war das Einzige, was nicht blind war, aber ansonsten hier auf YouTube mit euch teile, weil dadurch bin ich vorgewarnt gewesen. Hätte ich das privat gespielt, ich hätte alles hintereinander weg wahrscheinlich durchgezockt, ohne dem irgendwie Beachtung zu schenken. Aber egal, hier habe ich diese Lücke damit offiziell geschlossen. Ihr Lieben, ich bedanke mich. Ihr werdet euch wahrscheinlich jetzt nicht stundenlang das komplette Video gegeben haben, aber das Gute ist, wir können immer wieder zurückkehren zu einzelnen Punkten. Ich werde sicherlich das ein oder andere Mal zurückkehren, weil ich doch jetzt schon nicht mehr weiß, was ich vor 3 Stunden eigentlich vorgelesen habe, aber das ist, glaube ich, eine gute Lektüre, um im laufenden Let's Play so einen kleinen Anker zu haben und sein Wissen über einzelne Personen, Orte, Gegebenheiten, wie auch immer zu refreshen. Ich bedanke mich an dieser Stelle, egal ob ihr nur kurz reingeklickt habt oder euch das ganze Video angeguckt habt. Ich bedanke mich auf jeden Fall fürs Vorbeischauen und freue mich, wenn wir uns dann hoffentlich bald im richtigen Let's Play wiedersehen. Macht's gut, ihr Lieben. Bis dann. Ciao.